nationwide or just a microcosm in a small area. I think what we're seeing right now is a bit more than what I'm personally used to in terms of like how much it leads the conversation over policy, but generally we're always going to have something going on. As far as the institution question, I think we have seen some institutional capture at the university level. You can look at professors and people in unions and whatnot, and they're leaning, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a capture of the institution completely. If you look at the inception of Crossfire Hurricane, which we might get into it with the party discussion as well, you can see it doesn't have to be the entire institution. It could just be a small faction within the institution acting on corrupt political ways to thwart whatever they want to thwart. So I would say that in terms of institution, not only is it happening now and always happening, it's something we need to diligently look out for on a nonpartisan way.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Prince Apple.
I think we are in a culture war, but I don't think it's necessarily just because we want to be in a culture war. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're kind of living through a transition period from like an old world to a new world. We've got just in my life, I've seen the development of Wi-Fi getting put in everyone's house, everyone getting connected to the internet. A lot of the things that we decide about how this world is going to operate are happening right now. So I think that's a reason that we find ourselves engaged in this culture war. So I think ultimately it's just kind of a consequence of us having to make a lot of decisions about the long-term direction of our future.
All right. Thank you so much. The big JC.
Yeah. So I'm going to take the, very brave stance that everybody else has. Of course, there's a culture war. There always has been. But to Tyler's point, it does seem to direct policy a lot more than it did in the past. And I think that a big part of that is the internet and social media, being able to put whatever kind of bullshit you want out in the world, have it super, super boosted, and then have that become the mainstream political talking points. We've seen this happen time and time again with the dumbest fucking shit with the Republicans. And when it comes to whether or not ideologies have taken over institutions, I mean, it's pretty clear that conservatives dictate the direction of the media. Democrats are always forced to wring their hands and apologize over comments made about on private donor phone calls, whereas Republicans can laugh and laugh at Paul Pelosi's head almost getting fucking knocked in and laugh at him being gay and make all sorts of jokes and never see any sort of institutional consequences for that. So, yeah, there's a culture war, and the left is losing it right now.
All right. Thank you so much. And I'm going to go to Lactoid here. Lactoid, you can give an intro, tell us who you are, and give your opening as well. But after Lactoid, I'm going to frame the topic a little bit because I kind of wanted to see exactly what was going to happen with a such broad one, and then I'll open it up and y'all can stick them. But go ahead, Lactoid.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. All right. Well, I apologize for being a little bit late. This is what happens when you work late.
Typical.
Well. I know. It's been bad. It's a tough month, but I'm here, and
I don't
Gibbs,
forgive you.
I really appreciate you having me on, Gibbs. And I'm Lactoid. If you like what I have to say during this debate, you can find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm going to jump right into the topic here. The culture war absolutely is a real thing. A lot of people, especially people on the left, but a lot of different people have said that the culture war bullshit, right? That it's not really what people care about. What people really care about is the economy and et cetera. And I agree that the economy is important and there's other things that are important, but I think that the culture war is a real phenomenon that people vote on and people care about. And I think that's something that people should care about because it does frame the way that we're going to have our society going forward. Some evidence of the culture war right now is, I think, as we saw, the Black Lives Matter protests that occurred and really continue to occur, I think is evidence of a culture war. Between not necessarily white culture and black culture, but I think between racial, a sort of racial egalitarianism idea and what I believe to be a victim narrative, right? That there is a culture war currently ongoing there. I think to some extent that also exists with the LGBTQ movement currently in the United States, another element of the culture war. And really a lot of this started kicking off in 2014. If you look at rates of social media usage, they spike in 2014. You also see kind of identically mapping on a very strong correlation of decreasing race relations and a massive political shift of the millennial generation to further to the left. There's also a massive gender gap when it comes to perceptions of what culturally should be the case, and feminism is a big part of that. Both married men, unmarried men, and married women all tend to lean Republican. But single women specifically are Democrat almost 3-1. So it's overwhelmingly single women that make up one end of the culture war, and then on the other end, it's slightly married women, single men, and married men. And I think that the gender dynamics and the race dynamics here are driving a lot of the culture war, but a lot of it has to do with social media, kind of people hyperfixating on specific instances, blowing them up way out of proportion, and causing a lot of outrage. And I think it's a side effect of the outrage culture that we live in.
So before I let y'all go, the reason I didn't like narrow this first topic down more and when I posted it is because I know in conservative circles it's kind of broad, right? And one of the reasons I wanted to start hosting these panels, I wanted to kind of like bring topics conservatives talk about to like the Twitch poll sphere. And to me, it's interesting because we had all these different people on here, and everybody had something different to focus on the culture war. And it seems to be like one person mentioned Disney, another person mentioned feminism. We have all sorts of different things, and it's kind of interesting because I when we saw this killer, right, recently, the CEO killer, I know that some people immediately jumped to saying, like, higher education is institutionalized. Like, do y'all see the difference between something like higher education as an institution and a government as an institution and Disney being, running the culture war? Do y'all think they're all in cahoots? What do y'all think overall? Go ahead.
Education and government probably are going to be a lot more closely aligned than something like a private corporation and the government in terms of the culture that they're pushing, because the government is going to, I mean, at least in the United States, it's going to probably be broadly representing what the vast majority or a large majority of people believe and think, versus like a company is only going to do that insofar as it garners them profit. So, and then I would assume that schools being federally funded would, and state funded would probably have them following a lot more closely in line with whatever the government narrative is than the private institution. Does that make sense?
I want to stand up for the real victims here. They're rich billionaire corporations. So at the end of the day, these corporations are doing all sorts of field testing. They're doing all sorts of what's the word I'm looking for? Where they sample groups and whatnot. And they're working with different investment groups like BlackRock and all these things, pushing this standard, telling them this is the future, this is the route you need to go. Disney probably is doing that because they think it's the right way to move forward, not because of some ideological thing. I'm sure if you told them, hey, you'd lose money doing this, they wouldn't do that shit. They thought that was the right choice. The backlash happened, and they're reeling it back in. So I think a lot of these corporations spoke out politically because they thought they were going to be part of the next civil rights movement, which kind of jumps into my second point into like, I did say that this is the most in my lifetime that I've seen the culture war lead the battles, but like, I think it goes in cycles. I think the civil rights movement was more of a cultural battle than anything we see today. It's just we haven't seen something to that magnitude in 60 years. So it seems like a lot now, I would say. I just wanted to stand up for social media and corporations there.
So Tyler, all right. So this is kind of what I was trying to get at the meat of my question, right? So you mentioned Disney. You think Disney is saying, or we're going to make more profit if we go in this direction, right? I know a lot of conservatives on the other side say that they think it's a concerted effort across the board in multiple different institutions, and it's a push to like push out their beliefs and push that. Do you think that's what's happening? Do you see that overall, or you just think Disney's different or an exception?
I'd say it's the investment group BlackRock that's more pushing that narrative out to them, telling them this is the way to go, and if you want to invest with us and continue to be part of this investment conglomerate, you need to also do this. I think they're being told that. I don't think a lot of these corporations want that fight and want to take a political stance and lose money. They absolutely don't, actually.
What is Disney doing? Like, wait, what is Disney doing, and what are they reeling back?
They were different.
I can comment like right off the top of my head. I mean, and I think this is with a number of companies where you see sort of specifically with Disney, right? Making classic characters like race swapping them, right? So I think we saw that with The Little Mermaid, and then just recently with Snow White. In fact, with Snow White specifically, the actress who was chosen was talking a lot of shit about the character of Snow White and how Snow White was portrayed in the original film, and how this is anti-feminist. How we have to update it. We have to update this character to give young women like a more feminist perspective on what their heroes should be. But then especially since the election, I think, perhaps, I don't know if that has changed anything or perhaps that kind of woke some people up a little bit as to you see a little bit of a decline right now in these sort of DEI pushes. I'm pretty sure Disney just recently axed a trans storyline that was supposed to go forward in one of their shows that was planned, and then recently they pulled that. I'm not 100% sure why they pulled it, but the fact that they did pull it from the story, I think, is interesting. I think you're seeing, if I'm not mistaken, John Deere pulled some of, and I think Harley Davidson as well, pulled some of their DEI initiatives pretty recently as well. And then we also—
Can you qualify these DEI initiatives you're like gesturing at?
Well, so the examples I gave is like the race swapping characters in order to portray to the, I guess, public
Which
a sort of
they
a virtue
recently
signal.
did. Which
So-
you said they recently did. So it's not like they're pulling back. They just recently.
Well, I think
released
they're pulling back somewhat, right? I think this
Yeah,
is
they
a
are
relatively.
pulling back.
I think this is a relatively like the DEI thing has been, I think, going on since 2014. Is really when that started getting going, and you're seeing a little bit of a retraction right now because I think a lot of people don't like it. You're seeing, and we also what happened with Bud Light as well, right? There was an immediate reaction to that caused a pullback not only from the company but massive consequences for the company. And I think the threat of those consequences is really responsible for the company pulling back. And that was one thing I wanted to agree with you on, JC, which is I do think these companies are primarily in it for the profit. But I think what happens is people are going to push their ideology regardless of what position they're in. And so if they become part of a company, you're going to have within the company these left-minded people pushing their political agenda. And they can do that as long as it's not damaging the company's bottom line. In fact, sometimes it might actually help the company bottom line. And then the execs are all happy and everything because ultimately a company has a fiduciary duty to make money for its shareholders. But once that stops happening, once they start losing money, once they begin to sense that the culture has shifted and there's more antagonism towards these sort of left-wing or, kind of enforcing race representation or gender representation or LGBTQ representation, et cetera, and they're concerned this might hurt their bottom line, they're going to pull back, which is exactly what we see happening. Institutions that are not sensitive to profit, like the government and education, I don't think you're going to see those same things because there's no real consequences for pushing ideology that actually isn't publicly popular.
Yeah, there is. You lose elections. You lose elections.
You're in education. So in
I'm
education,
right. Thank you. Just say it. Just say it. I'm right. I know.
No. I think in education, that's not going to be the case. When it comes to public institutions, there's a push to.
You don't vote for school board?
I'm talking about like more like universities, right? And generally, school boards don't control these kind of universities. But when we're talking,
wasn't there a whole big thing recently with like the dean of Harvard or something getting hauled in front of Congress for like anti-Semitism and shit? Pretty sure there are consequences if like those kinds of ideologies are being like promoted or supported on a campus.
That was specifically for like allegations of anti-Semitism. And by the way, some of the insinuations of what they were questioning her on, I actually didn't like. Actually, somewhat anti-free speech. But
sure, but you would agree with me that like the anti-Semitism claims that they were talking about were things like from the river to the sea, et cetera, all the like related to the Israel-Palestine, the recent resurgence of the conflict. So would you say that is like a ideological push within an institution if she was getting up there and refusing to take like a hard stance against this stuff, or at very least kind of playing? I mean, it's difficult for me because on the one hand, I think college campuses should be like zones of free thought and expression, but on the other hand, like to what you're saying, like there are actually consequences. Like if they go against the zeitgeist, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's minimal. Okay, let me rephrase a little bit. When I'm saying there's not really consequences, if we're talking about education and at least the bureaucratic element of the government, I can't guarantee there won't be any consequences in the sense that Congress can subpoena whoever they want. They can compel you to show up to Congress and testify. Are there you're not charged with anything. There's not consequences if you're like.
Does that dean still have her job?
I'm pretty sure she was fired for plagiarism.
Pretty sure she was fired.
Yeah, for plagiarism because they discovered like she had plagiarized most of her dissertation.
Was she really fired for plagiarism, or was she fired for something they could get her on because everybody
she had
wanted
some
her out?
pretty. I looked into this. She had some pretty horrific plagiarism. I don't think Harvard would have gotten rid of her just for the political position she held, because we don't see that.
Do you think that
I'm not
they
aware of it
cared about
happening
the
on any
plagiarism
other.
before or after? Like, when did that come up? Before or after she was hauled in front of Congress?
Well, I think that when you have somebody who's politically controversial,
Okay.
oftentimes, hold on, when you have people who are politically controversial, oftentimes you have then people dig into her past or dig into their
Right.
past, and then they find a perfectly valid reason to get rid of her. I don't think
yeah,
you
I'm
see
not
the
saying
same
like
thing on
plagiarism was
other.
good or anything.
Well, real quick, I don't think
I'm
you
just
see-
pointing out, like
I'm
Hunter
not saying-
Biden, they
I'm not
didn't go
saying-
after her just out of the blue, right? It was because she had said things that
Sure.
were politically distasteful.
Yes, you're going to motivate some people
So
to
there are
investigate you.
consequences.
You're going to
She lost her job.
you're going to motivate people to like look into you if you're going to be like politically controversial, for sure. Okay, but what I'm saying is that we don't see this happening like across the board on left-wing like college institutions, which is most colleges across the country. You do have this example, I guess, of her being hauled to Congress and then people taking a closer look into her background and saying, hey, what the fuck, you committed all this plagiarism. Was the Hunter Biden trial politically motivated? The motivation to look into it for sure was, but the actual charges themselves weren't political.
Oh, come on.
Hold on, the actual charges themselves, like it was a crime, but that's
Okay.
true. But the fact they looked into it was that was the political element.
Residue on a gun from like fucking yeah, no.
Yeah, hold on. Them looking into that was political. I agree, but like the actual charges themselves were.
Would you say the same thing about Trump's charges?
Well, I think some of them. I think some of them are complete bullshit, right? So, like the New York trial, for example, complete bullshit. There are other things.
In what way? He committed the crime, right? You're going to apply the same.
I don't think he committed the crime. I don't think.
You don't think he committed the crime?
No.
I don't think it was a crime until they made special legislation to make it a crime.
Okay, wait. I got an easier one. Mar-a-Lago, Lactoid. Was that a politically motivated?
I don't even know if that was a crime, and I don't even know if that was politically motivated because. You
don't think that Donald Trump obstructing the National Record Administration's attempts to recover those documents was a crime?
No, I said I do think it's a crime.
Did you? Oh, okay. So it was a crime. It was brought by a political motivation, but does that mean
I don't know if it was brought by
politically?
I don't know how political that actually was. Like, Trump fucked up on that one pretty bad. Yeah.
Okay, Lactoid, I would love to.
I think the fact. Wait, let me clarify. I think the fact they didn't go after Joe Biden for the same thing.
No, don't give them that.
If you read her report, you would know why.
I've read the whole her report.
So have I. We should talk about it sometime.
We might be the only people in existence that actually fucking read it and have actual educated opinions on it.
300 some pages? I don't fucking remember off the top of my head.
You read it? Well, you didn't read it before our debate. Fucking Tyler, what the fuck?
I didn't debate Rob Noor about it, okay? I have to read the whole thing.
I read Durham.
Yeah, but all kidding aside, we are not going to fucking go through the her report today on Gibbs' channel. That's what we're not going to do.
Line by line, right now. Let's go.
Dear God, thank you. Sounds fun, but no, we're not doing that. Okay, somebody else. Anybody else? All right.
Yeah, well, I want to say something.
Please, go ahead. Thank you. Take us away from the her report.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me pull up the document and go.
Nice.
So people bring up the example of Disney potentially being captured, okay, and I think there's potentially something to say about that. But I do want to bring up. So I wonder if anyone considers, let's say, Fox News to be ideologically captured, considering the defamation lawsuit. Is that an example of also an ideological capture or not?
That's a weird one because Fox News, are they captured if they actually started out to
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, they started, it would be like asking if the Daily Wire's captured when the Daily Wire is open.
There's definitely captured.
Well, yeah, but Disney has greater freedom to do whatever they want.
Wait. Is Pride New York captured by the LGBTQ agenda?
That's the whole
There's
point.
conservatives that think the Daily Wire is captured by Israel supporters.
In my mind,
just Ben Shapiro.
Let me finish my point. In my mind, there's no greater example of capture. You're literally afraid of your audience. Like they value pretty much like keeping their audience as opposed to truth. They lied, they settled. Okay, they were so afraid to actually go to court that I believe is like the largest defamation lawsuit in history. Correct me if I'm wrong. If anybody knows better.
Some $1 billion.
Yeah, and so what is a better example of ideological capture of yes, we are literally beholden to our ideologically captured audience that we actually can't tell them the truth because they are so delicate and they're basically snowflakes. How is that not ideological capture?
Didn't they fire their most prominent and watched host at the same time as they settled that lawsuit?
Yes.
Well, so my conspiracy theory on that is because he was caught talking shit about Trump.
Maybe.
Yeah,
but
same
he's
lawsuit.
Who else did they
campaign
fire?
now,
Who
so-
Always-
else did
it's
they
always
fire?
Trump's
Because it
fault,
wasn't
guys.
just Tucker in those text messages. So like, who else did they fire?
But conservatives are okay with that type of ideological capture because that's the type of capture that they want. Okay, they don't like Disney capture because it's not the ideological capture that they want. That's all the difference is. Okay.
I don't think so. Again, they started out as a conservative alternative to the media, where Disney.
I can say university has always started off as a liberal bias.
Like, I'm trying to get this point across to you. You have to define capture. Capture means that you started at a point of independence and were captured by a side or captured by something that wasn't your origin. If you start out as a conservative media alternative, then you're not
Fox News.
captured.
Wait, didn't Fox News go from being fair and balanced to just like blatantly?
I mean, they say
That was the line. Do you really buy that?
They
Are
were-
you?
But, I
like,
mean, that's
naive
what they were
enough?
trying to. That's what they were trying to make themselves out to be, though.
Well, it depends when
Okay.
you're watching Fox News. If you're watching their primetime hosts versus whether you're watching like during the day. There are a lot of people that don't like Fox News during the day because they feel like it's the same as like woke left media, and then there's
I
people
love
who
it
just
during
love the
the day.
prime
Because it
time, like
reports
Tucker,
facts in the
Hannity.
news. Imagine.
Well, yeah, there's
Conservatives thinking that's a liberal bias to report on facts.
See, like, I don't think that you're attacking conservatives here, but like.
Wait, hold on.
It's
Can you
gonna stay off the
explain that? Hold on. Can you explain that last statement there, JC? What do you mean by that?
What do I mean by what?
Your last
Imagine
statement.
conservatives calling facts liberal bias.
So okay.
Can I just gesture vaguely at the entire coronavirus pandemic, or like, can we just move on?
Do you think that the Russia thing was legit? Because if that's true, why is nobody even talking about it? It's like you guys want to pretend you didn't claim it was a fact that Trump colluded with Russia. Here he's coming into office again, and you're coming up with something else. Surprise, surprise! The Russia thing fell apart. No, I'm just saying that like, it used to be a fact.
Okay,
it used to be a fact that COVID came from bat soup. It used to be a
I
fact that Trump colluded with Russia.
Hold on.
The whole point is your guys' facts can be manipulated.
Actually, I know what I want to think. Let me reframe this. All right. So, all right, we just mentioned the facts. We have this set. People argue about the alt facts all the time, right? Like if that's a real thing, if it's a real facts or just liberal facts or whatever. Kind of like what he said. And I find it interesting that there's one group that'll say it's like science, and then another group will do whatever, and it's like except in these categories, and then the other side does it too. Like, do we think it's like a concerted effort, or like what's going on here? Why is
What
this happening?
categories does the left do that in, Gibbs? Can you give me a list?
Because you basically said earlier that the right wing dictates the media, and the right wing people would generally say that like basically they think that they had to leave the media and create alt media because all they had was Fox News, and then they created like not even Rogan was a Bernie bro, but like all these other people that have like come up kind of thing. But you seem to disagree. Like, so I guess they were, when y'all talk about capture, like, I don't know, where you
No,
go?
I think the perception of the left kind of capturing the media has existed for a long time. Whether it's accurate or not has more to do with the individual asking the question than like the actual state of things. Any news station, including Fox News, that reports on news on the ground is more or less accurate. I read Fox News, I read CBS, I compare this shit like just for funsies sometimes. It's pretty, there's a slant one way or the other. But when it comes to like the alternative media, that's why I say that conservatives have captured the media, have controlled the narrative. Because again, people don't even know who John Eastman is. Right? But they know exactly what Hunter Biden was doing. They know that he was in Ukraine. They know he was selling his dad's name, but nobody knows who John Eastman is. Nobody knows anything surrounding like the build up to January 6th. Nobody even fucking knows or cares what happened on January 6th. And that is only because Fox News and all of these other alternative media dipshits, Tim Pool, Ben Shapiro, who released a video the day after January 6th condemning it and then pulled it down when he had to start sucking Trump's dick again. It's so blatantly obvious. Like, it's impossible for me to we would be sitting here for hours while I pull up every example I've ever seen of conservatives warping the narrative of, onto the Democrats for being evil for everything and away from themselves for being evil for anything.
You can look at any congressional hearings that there are. Most people don't know the details for them. If you look at the inception of Crossfire Hurricane and that being an investigation,
it doesn't make it acceptable, Tyler. People should know who John Eastman is. He was the lawyer that cooked up the scheme for Trump to steal the election.
It's up to them to go do that research. It's not like it's not out there. It's not like you can't just go to Wikipedia.
No. It's not that it's up to them to do the research. It's up to the media companies to not obstruct the facts. That's not their fucking job.
They ran the January 6th hearings during prime time. primetime television on multiple channels.
I think
people
they
ran the hearings. Did they report on it?
Yeah, that's reporting on. They ran it during prime
No,
time.
it is not.
People
no,
don't care.
telecasting the fucking C-SPAN is not reporting on it in a way that your average American can understand and digest it.
No
you are
Benghazi
being
hearing.
intentionally deceptive.
This is wildly dumb. Like Benghazi hearings were not posted on prime time. They weren't even on TV most of the time.
Yeah, but
C-SPAN
everyone's guilty, right?
I think
Hold on. I want to go.
emails.
Hold on. I want to go to Lactoid, and then we'll go to Global Clock here. Go ahead.
So it seems like we're talking a little bit about like media coverage. I agree. Media's, especially when we're talking about news or like political aspects, is kind of complicated when we're talking about ideological capture compared to I think what brands itself as a sort of neutral media company, like entertainment company like Disney, that primarily markets its content to children. I think that when we're talking about political capture, that's where the real concern is, as opposed to news agencies that are talking about current events and politics, and it's difficult. I think.
Speak for yourself. Children can't vote, so I don't really care.
Hold on. I think it's important to I guess draw a line there. But even when we're looking at like news, for example, so if we want to go back and we'll talk about this election too, but if we want to go back to in 2017, for example, among CNN and NBC, 93% of their stories about Trump that they ran were negative, and only 7% were positive. CBS was 91% negative. The New York Times was 87% negative. Washington Post was 83% negative. Wall Street Journal was 70% negative. And Fox News was 52% positive and 52% negative and 48% positive. So even Fox News was slightly more negative towards Donald Trump than they were positive. In the last election, for example, in the week leading up to Election Day, coverage among ABC, CBS, and NBC was 78% positive among Kamala Harris, and 85%.
I'm super curious. What's a negative example of reporting on Donald Trump from Fox News? Can you show me that? What does that look like?
I'm just talking about the study. I can't bring up specific examples for you. I'm just talking about
calling his Madison Square Garden rally a Nazi rally is like one easy example.
I'm just talking about the study,
reason I'm
which is going through the different stories and seeing which ones are negatively framed.
No, I get it.
Framed. Well, but hold on.
I get it.
You're saying you get it. Hold on. You're saying you get it, but if you want to point to a specific example, we can find specific examples if you want.
No,
I think it's better to point to like an aggregate study that's looking at overall this supposedly like Republican conservative captured media is overwhelmingly anti-Trump, and the one news site, Fox News, that you're pointing to is very slightly anti-Trump.
Okay,
I'm going to let you respond, and then I want to go to Liberal Clock. Go ahead.
The reason that I asked for an example is because you're speaking in very general terms here. You're just saying that they reported negatively on Trump. Well,
dude,
sure.
They twisted Tony Hinchcliffe's comments into a negative Trump story. They do it all the time. You're acting like they don't do it. It's just like, can we not pretend that they don't do that?
Hello, bro. Shut the fuck up. All right. The reason
I could literally sit here for an hour and give you example after example after example. They call him a racist because he wants to build a border wall. Like, you wanted an example, I could just list them off. So you can go on your little rant, but there are plenty of examples.
Let's go to Clark. Go ahead, Clark.
No, wait. What the fuck?
Okay,
no, I get to finish my point. You need to mute him if he won't let me finish a fucking point.
To be fair, you've been cutting me off a lot, but go ahead.
You know what? That's a good point. From now on, Gibbs, you should mute people.
Yeah, just go ahead. Finish your point real quick.
Yeah. So the reason that I asked is because being negative can be, I don't really like this thing that Trump said, but I guess, there's this other side to it. Or it can be, fuck Donald Trump, he's literally Hitler. Like, all of that exists within this axiom of negative. And I'm not going to give Fox News any credit if they were doing the former as opposed to the latter. That's why I was asking for a specific example.
Hold on.
I guess
I'm going to go to Clark. He's been waiting a real long time. Go ahead, Clark.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So I believe Lactoid's study. I would say that's because there's overwhelmingly negative things that has to do with Trump. But I wanted to address Tyler's point where he was talking about how they ran the January 6th committees on primetime, and that is true. And I think that the fact that they did that, and there's still lack of people that actually know about what happened on January 6th and the lead up to that, kind of tells you how much power the mainstream media has actually lost over the years, and the fact that alternative media is like gaining power in the way it is, and that it does seem to be it's much more in favor of the right than it really should be, is probably makes what JC was saying earlier more accurate in my mind.
Sure, but the goalpost wasn't the media losing power. The goalpost was what institutions control and dictate the media. And I think the point still sits that this is pretty solid proof of my argument.
Well, like dictate the media, we're talking about the media as a whole, and right now the alternative media is what has the power.
Let me just do a show of hands. Who here thinks that the right controls the narrative in the media generally?
Yeah,
I think the study that I list, like the percentages I listed, definitively disproves that.
No, it doesn't. For the reason that I cite, unless you're going to start.
I mean, why do you think like the right wing's dominating like podcast space? Partially because they've been excluded from. You're not going to see like
Joe
Rogan type content on corporate
He
news.
invited her. She said no. That was entirely her fault.
I'm just saying people aren't consuming conservative media as a consequence of this new developing form of media.
That's even better because I can
Gibbs already is waiting.
something you guys all like.
Oh, hold on. Let someone go. I'm going to let all three of you give it over. Go ahead.
The question here is whether people are turning to conservative media as a consequence of turning towards podcasts, as a consequence of turning towards YouTubers and other content like that, as opposed to just people actually finding that content because they're chasing that ideology already. I'm not saying which one it is. I'm just saying we have to kind of sort through that now. Are people turning to conservative media because it's already dominant on the platforms that everyone's moving to, or are people moving to those platforms in part because they're chasing the type of content that corporate media doesn't sign off on?
So real quick, Gibbs, just to clarify, I was incorrect there, or I don't know. All I said was she on there? Apparently he did ask, and she refused, which just goes to Liberal Cluck's point, which is that alternative media has so much more of the sphere and control right now than the mainstream media, and alternative media is dominated by the right.
And the thing is, I don't think that it's necessarily a problem. The alternative media is like right or left. I don't even think that's a problem. I think it's how much lies just get told and then propagated on the alternative media compared to like mainstream media
with no consequence.
Which is
Well, is there a difference to you guys between lies and people just being wrong? Because it's natural when you have people like us talking that we're going to be wrong about things.
Yeah,
I mean, you're not wrong. There's a question of intent, but I think there's naturally when you're in this format, people are more likely to just be wrong in general. I mean, people are wrong even in this corporate form. So let's not pretend like having this corporate backing immunizes you from being wrong.
There's
a difference between lying.
Information.
Hold on.
Right.
Yeah, no, you're right.
But I think a lot of what you're saying is like, oh, all of these lies. A lot of this is just a worldview you don't share.
Can I answer it? Yes, there is a difference in being wrong and lying, but I think there's also a difference in being wrong and caring that you're wrong at the end of the day and changing the way in which you go about gathering information to not be wrong in the future or as wrong in the future.
Sure. Yeah.
Rogan's left wing, so the media space online and the alternative media is dominated by the left wing if the number one podcast is a left winger. So let's stop.
Joe Rogan is not left wing.
Yeah,
he endorsed Bernie Sanders. He used to be
for 2024.
Okay, let me jump in.
Yeah, why did that happen? I wonder why he did that.
He endorsed for 2024.
Okay, hold on, guys.
Dude, you lost to Bernie, bro. That's the point.
Everybody calm down. One second.
You just want to pretend he was never a Bernie, bro.
Wait, can I please address that?
1 second, Papa, and then everybody can address whatever the fuck they want after that. We're gonna let Ollie come in here. How you doing, Ollie? You doing all right?
I'm chilling, man. I was just y'all getting hype right away.
Yeah, we're gonna. Yeah, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do. I'm gonna let Ollie go here. If he wants to say anything, unless he wants to wait and I don't know.
What are we doing? The culture war? Is this?
Yeah, the culture war. Yeah, and then after Ollie, I'm gonna go to Sparky because he hadn't been able to get it either. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and we're talking about the culture war. Yeah, currently.
Yeah, I think most alternative media that does the whole right or left thing just becomes the non-alternative media that they try to become. As far as like the best version of alternative media and whether it was like right or left leaning, Joe Rogan. I think Joe Rogan was just a centrist guy who, I don't know, had a bunch of people on, talk to them about whatever the fuck, and then whether people were right, wrong, misinformation, disinformation, whatever the fuck it was, it's not up to the people that we look up to as influencers to just like consistently give us right information. We should probably look it up on our own. So is there a culture war? Yes. Who's winning the culture war right now? Probably the right a little bit. Who's but why? It's because the left, and I started saying this a few years ago, the left's been pretty fucking weak and annoying for like a while. It's been very whiny. It's been very whiny. And as someone who I like left policies, right? I do like social policies. I don't give a fuck about high taxes. We should have state funded shit. I'm pro that shit. I can still admit that. Jesus Christ, man, the left is very, very, very bitchy. And that's why you see a lot of guys, younger men, moving towards the right. It's slightly unfortunate
So they
because
can be
there's a lot of
bitchier.
misinformation and disinformation on the right. Because you kind of just say whatever the fuck you want on that side to win, and then once you win, you do what you can to prove that you're worthy of the. So you say what you want, you win, and then no one really holds you up to those same standards because it's like well, that's just the game that was being played. But yeah, did I cover it? But yeah, Joe Rogan definitely was left leaning. Right, like he was definitely left leaning. He wasn't a leftist by any means.
A lot
He
of
was
these
just
guys were.
some dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was just some dude.
Okay,
but
was.
Well, hold on.
leader.
So
we're using
we're gonna
past
go to-
tense.
We're
I
gonna
never
go to
denied that
Sparky.
he was a Bernie,
We're gonna
bro.
go- hold
He's
on.
not
He
anymore.
was
Hold on.
until this
We're-
year.
hold-
He
we're
was
gonna
until
go-
this year. That doesn't
I'm
count.
yelling
That
at
doesn't
myself.
count. That doesn't count. Stop using the word once.
We're gonna go to Sparky, and then after Sparky finishes, attack. There you go.
We're taking Anna Kasparian
I
next.
just want to let some people get in that got in.
We're taking Jen.
Destiny is coming soon, bro.
Yeah, right.
No,
No.
shit.
Oh,
No,
it's fine.
That's not happening.
Destiny is no.
We'll see.
Hold on.
He calls his
listen,
own mother a
100%
retard.
on my predictions, guys. Like, let's not.
Destiny seems to actually care about the Constitution, so
No,
really
he
sure
really
shifting
doesn't.
conservative anytime
he only
soon.
cares about when he thinks it's important.
I'm not going to be dictated about that by a conservative. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sparky.
I don't really care what
God,
you
you
think.
sound like him. Jesus.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Sparky, did you have your thoughts?
No, it's fucking stupid. Look, when it comes down to certain media deals, yeah, certain ideologies tend to dominate. Look at AM radio; it's mostly conservative spaces. Online depends on the platform you're talking about. If you're talking about Rumble, it's definitely more of a conservative platform. Here on Twitch, this is the most libcucked
Reddit.
freaking deal that exists. Reddit, X, formerly known as Twitter, is more conservative than it was. A lot of you pansies ran off to blue sky CP land, and yeah, that's definitely a left hard space. Kick, same thing, CP ridden left hard space. It is what it is. To say that any of them are absolutely better or worse, I'm gonna tell you, for the most part, overall, the leftists control more institutions when it comes to things like your education, more things like entertainment, but conservative media is starting to pick up on it. As much as I hate to say it, Daily Wire is actually stepping their game up, putting out some decent content here and there. They're trying to.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was
Go
just going to
ahead.
say, in defense of the CP thing, as a programmer,
Whoa.
when you start up...
CP is not a way
Phrase
to
that
Right away.
differently.
We need CP.
Phrase that
CP.
differently.
Okay, when
Yeah.
you start up a new website, there's a lot of backdoor channels. There's a lot of things that you don't have incorporated security-wise into that website, and a lot of these nefarious drug dealers, child porn, all sorts of bad shit you don't want in your site will traffic through it in the early times until you figure out how to filter it properly. So a lot of that is the bugs of having a newer social media website, probably for Bluesky, that's going on for them right now. So I wouldn't say that. Let's judge them in 2 years if there's still a big CP problem.
Okay, so there's only one side of the political spectrum that actually has done things to like try to rename to better brand child sex offenders. They like to call them minor attracted people or persons. That doesn't come from the right, pal.
Wait, that came
So
from
it
the
is.
left? What's your
Yes,
where-
it definitely comes from the left.
I mean, yeah. Okay, that's just a vibe, though. You have nothing to back that
No,
up, right?
There's a
yeah,
lot to back that up, actually.
there's actually a lot to back that up because
Okay,
I mean,
okay.
Do you
What do I
disagree,
do?
do you disagree with that
Google
statement?
open,
Oh,
what do I
wait,
type in?
JC, do you disagree with that statement?
Hold on. Just because I ask someone for clarification doesn't mean I necessarily disagree. If I'm
just
asking, like,
that's what I was asking you if you disagree.
I don't know. If
I
it
can-
came from the left,
That's a
then
fair
it's
answer.
fucking stupid
Wait,
thing the
I
left
can-
did, but
I can
I don't
speak
know
to
if it
the-
did.
I can speak to the maps thing. The people who want to call child predators maps has this idea in their head, and whether or not it's true, I have no idea. I don't know if there's any studies that backs it up. That says that if you stop stigmatizing the attraction to kids and only stigmatize and punish the actual abuse of kids, then people who are attracted to kids can get help before they actually abuse kids. Therefore, leading to a world where less kids are being abused.
Yeah, but that's a left-leaning thing. I thought that was like
Yeah.
a clinical critical theory.
Well,
This
the
is
thing
a
is,
subgroup.
he's
This is a
framing
subgroup of
this.
a different-
He's
Hold on.
framing this as if these
You're
people
giving
are
it up.
trying to.
It's
There's
pretty
one more-
simple.
Let
there's
him
one more
tell on
before-
himself.
Before this, feminist writers from the 60s and the 70s that were outspoken communist, feminist writers. All Judith Butler comes from that group, and they would openly advocate for cross-generational relationships with minors, and openly advocate that minors have the ability to understand their sex enough to understand that they're mature enough to choose a partner at an age before 18. So there's a big connection.
All
with
of
this in the left.
psychology comes from a guy who thought that everyone was attracted to their mothers. Yes,
Also,
Sigmund Freud.
The idea that there were
was
people who
not-
said that you should be pedophiles on the left means that the left is intrinsically linked to pedophilia. That's the most
These are
ridiculous
some
thing I've ever
big
heard in my
fucking
life.
names. This is the woman that invented gender theory.
So fucking what?
Funny.
Look into John Money.
To be like a authoritative
Oh,
voice
oh,
on
look at
humanity
Somebody
and
on the street.
psychology.
Look at that.
Like, these people existed. These are big left-wing thinkers that were in
Okay,
institutions.
sure. So
Yeah,
wait,
they
are
prominent
you willing to
positions
say
in the
then that there are no prominent right wing thinkers or leaders in the past that have ever been in favor of or pedophiles themselves?
Absolutely, there
Right,
were. It's
so
just right
my-
now in the
We're trying
country.
to frame this like it's a left wing thing.
My point
Okay,
is
minor
that the
technical,
goal.
yes.
The goal of these people isn't to make us sympathize with child predators. The goal of these people is to actually have less children being abused. Like that's the
Yeah,
I can
ultimate goal.
speak to the left wing aspect of it. I think so like at least in terms of like online debate and online space, it seems like the people who love to discuss and rationalize and discuss like CP and all of that shit seems to be the left. The right does seem to kind of like stay away from those types of like rationale. Typically, it's because like I don't know, no one really. I don't know why the left likes talking about it, and especially online. But you got to give credit to where credit's due. Like they painted it as themselves, and it just seems that like more often than not, when it comes to shit like that, it leans a little bit on the left. When it comes to like average everyday people, obviously you have your religious figures and your like celebrities and so on and so forth. But we're talking about like when it comes to like I don't know, like what seems to be the average. Kind of leans on the left, which is why it seems to be like a left thing. And the people who typically sympathize with like the acceptance of like maps and like in regard of how it was just explained was would typically be someone like in the left sphere who would like rationalize shit versus someone in the right who's a bit more conservative who's like nah fuck it, if you're attracted you could just get thrown into a wood chipper, right?
So-
like that's typically the thought
Like,
on the
if-
right.
Hold on. So like y'all
Like, it's-
mentioned this a couple times, right? Like so now we've started to argue, right? I know some people here on the right have definitely argued like okay, like it's in at their like collegiate level, some of these things are institutionalized and like these ideas come from like whatever. And then on the left side, y'all have argued, oh hey, it's the language. I think it's interesting. It's like oh well, we should just call them facts, but y'all are trying to label it as like liberal facts or something, right? And I like y'all think that like there's any truth to this? Like is there some like idea that like the righties are just rejecting facts outright and blaming the institutions are ideologized, so
Yes,
science doesn't matter,
absolutely.
or like
Yes,
or do we think that like
obviously.
the other one? Or go ahead.
Obviously, yes.
I don't think that the left is immune to it, but I think that we engage in it a lot less
Oh.
than the right does.
I didn't mean to
so-
agree to that.
like-
I was just
what-
agreeing to the first part.
One thing is if you look at the conversation during COVID, the wild ass theories that was coming out of the right, it was just insane. The idea that the COVID was a bioweapon came from the right. The idea that masks don't work and that Fauci said that masks don't work, that's not what he said. If you actually listen to that interview, that is not what he said. All this shit just came out of the right. The vaccine was going to make you magnetic. That lady made it to Congress to talk in front of Congress and try to put a piece of metal on her. Like,
Didn't the racist wet market lie that Chinese people eat bats and have sex with pangolins come from the left?
I don't know about the
what's
sex with
the
pangolins,
conversation we're getting into
but the
now?
wet
What-
market.
what are we trying to? Where
Yeah,
are
that's
we going with
TOC
here?
one, I
Are we
think.
just going back and forth on like the lies
the
and the
wet
shit that
market
comes from
theory
the right
is
or the
still
left?
the leading theory.
I don't know. Yeah, sociologic. I think you have a point there. Like at the end of the day, both sides are lying to you for political gain.
Yeah.
You're gonna sit and pretend like one's better than the other. It's
Wait,
I
the
hate
wet
this
market.
bullshit.
No,
the
we're
wet
not
market
pretending
theory is
we're
still
not
the leading
reality.
theory.
One side is worse than the other.
No.
Objectively
wet
speaking,
market-
yes.
You
The
just
wet
at one
market
side
theory-
more than the other.
The
No, wet market theory is
still
not the leading theory.
Yes, it is.
No,
Because
it
it was-
isn't. Just
hold on,
because you're a racist and thinks Chinese
you-
people eat
hold
outside
on,
the
hold on,
same
hold on, hold on.
doesn't
I
mean
don't-
that's
I
the
don't-
Keeps
theory.
throwing out the racist accusations.
Hold on,
Kind of
yeah.
hysterical.
hold on. We're done with that. I don't know what that is. All right, let's just move back. I'm gonna go to Corey. Corey, hey, how you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
All right, so I know you.
Can I fact check something real quick before you ask the question?
Sure.
So,
Please.
the actual, this was Fauci's first statement, quote, "There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better and might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think it is. And often, there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask and they keep touching their face."
So wait,
well,
hold on. Wait, I gotta
Who
speak
the
to that.
fuck has a soundboard?
That
Gotta
was
speak to that.
wild.
So yes, after it came out,
ask me a
after it
question.
came out that the virus can be spread airborne by asymptomatic people, Fauci changed his tune on
we're
that
not
because
doing
he got
that. We're not
more
doing that.
information.
What?
Well,
All right, we're not doing
just to be clear, right? That's what Fauci did say that, and in fact,
Yeah, he did.
no, there
but
was
he
an
did say
interview with him.
masks don't work.
Hold on.
Autistic here. I
Hold
could
on,
even
I'm
say
not-
that
I'm not
him
being-
saying it
I'm
doesn't
not-
give
stop cutting me
perfect
off. Let me
protection. It leads
respond.
to unintended consequences.
Stop, no. Stop cutting me off and let me finish. When he says there's no reason to be walking around with a mask, there was an interview, I'll find that next, in which the reason why he said this was because they needed masks for medical facilities, and he didn't want all the masks to be taken up by the consumer base buying
Yes,
up all the
because
masks.
at the time he didn't
Okay.
think the
All right,
consumer
all right,
base
stop.
needed it.
No.
Stop.
So the
Hey,
actual
we can talk about this.
motivation.
Hey, we can talk about this
Somebody-
one-on-one.
No,
We can talk about
Gibbs,
this one-on-one later.
Gibbs.
I'm happy to have a
Stop.
one-on-one conversation.
All right,
He's
you
just
can talk
saying,
later.
"Oh, the right lied about this," but
Stop.
Fauci said that. He actually said it. This happens so much with his fucking fact checking. You look into it,
Hey,
turns
Gibbs.
out we're right.
Okay, so we'll come back to that in a second.
It
Hold
was
on.
a
I want
Louis,
hold on.
can we? I'm ready. I'm ready.
One
Use
second.
that mute
I
button.
read you the
I
quote.
will do the muting.
Do
I just
it.
I don't want to have to. But all right, Corey.
Please do
So
it.
you're like basically you teach, right? You're like an institutional level, right? Correct. Okay. So would you say,
I'm independent now. I was institutional at one point. I'm currently independent. Yes.
so you have like
longer.
experience?
You're so institutionalized, though.
I
Yeah,
would.
I should be. Yes.
So let me ask this: Do
Me
you
too,
do you
brother.
think that in your experience, is it your like anecdotal experience that academia seems to lean more left?
Yeah. Overall, there's a heavy left liberal bias has historically held true for probably the past 200 or since the founding of the academy over 2,000 years ago with Aristotle and Plato.
Yeah. Is there any like particular reason why that you think that is?
Yeah, in general, that is largely going to be a function of personality. As in, generally speaking, on average, when it comes to analytical thinking style, and intuitive thinking style, those who are left-leaning have a more analytical thinking style, and so they're better able to question, deconstruct, and they also score higher on openness. So they want to actually explore ideas, as opposed to, generally speaking, conservatives do not.
Okay, so
I mean,
which brings
also,
me-
don't
that's the
conservatives discourage college generally?
So yeah, well, this is what,
Just to put a pin on that, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Despite all the rhetoric of universities being captured, I believe Donald Trump is still sending Barron Trump to university, I believe, as we speak. So seems to be no concern there.
Well,
Sure,
no,
yeah.
hold on. So let me ask
hold
one more
on.
question, and then I'll turn it over. I want to quote answers. So all right. To me, it sounds like you're arguing that are more analytical, and like you're kind of like your arguments line up similar to what I would expect. Clux and JC's argument is that like liberal facts are facts, right? Right, and that seems to be the argument that they're making, as opposed to like the right-leaning people are gonna like I don't know, not be as
Trump
fact
facts.
based. They're gonna be alt facts, or they're not gonna be fact based.
On
Trump
average,
media.
there's a high regard for the quote unquote capital T truth, so to speak.
So how do you like frame something like that with I don't know what we just experienced with Lactoid, where the one side with the left was over here believing one thing, and the Lactoid's over here like, but he did say it. We have the little quote.
Because
How do you frame that?
because they rely
I
on
believe
science, and science can be wrong.
He asked me a question, so let me. One, I would have engaged with Lactoid honestly, but obviously I'm spoken over by certain people. So I'd be curious, Lactoid. What was the date of that quote, if you have it?
It was in 2020. It was
Really?
March 8th, 2020.
Right. So I believe that was like pretty much like in the beginning, right before lockdowns, or when the pandemic was building. Is that like a fair assessment? And I agree, he lied, as in, but I think we're on the same page. At least maybe we're not. But would you say that's early in the pandemic, March 8th, 2020?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I agree that he lied, but also there's an element of truth in what he said in terms of the data wasn't out at that time in terms of the actual spread of the virus.
The motivation wasn't made clear, though.
I agree with you.
And
I agree.
regardless, you can't say that he didn't say it. He did
No,
say
I
it,
didn't.
right?
That's why I said I said
I
he
know,
did lie.
I know you're saying that. I know you're saying that, but like, this is the frustrating thing. Like, I'm again, not coming after anybody here specifically on this, but I recall during the debate when Trump said the whole gender transition operations for illegal migrants, right? People like rolled their eyes. He's lying. There's no way this is true. It was true. The whole thing was true. Like, it was 100% true that Kamala supported that. And so what I'm almost like, I'm a little bit worried that this perception, is that, oh, the right wing is constantly like saying falsehoods. But I'm concerned that some of this perception is influenced by falsehoods on the left of just like believing that they're lying when actually they're not lying.
I can engage with that. I can engage with that. Let me engage with that. So
after you do that, I want to go to the top left. That go ahead. So, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm curious, like Lactoid earlier, you referenced sort of, percentages, negative framing of Donald Trump. Okay, totally fair. I'm curious if you looked into the data in terms of when it comes to political leanings and who is more likely to share misinformation or false information. What do you think that data looks like, or have you looked into it?
There was one study I looked into. It was out of Germany that studied who was more likely to purvey misinformation, and it was an incredibly flawed study, and the reason it was flawed is they were looking for very specific claims of misinformation. And the types of misinformation that they were looking for were the kind of misinformation that right-wingers would be more likely to spread. And so the conclusion was, among these specific types of misinformation, right-wingers are more likely to spread them. The problem, and this is part of the problem when it comes to the bias of setting up these studies to begin with, which is which specific misinformations are you choosing to look for, and who are you looking for in terms of spreading these misinformations? Yeah, I have no doubt that if you're look for who's more likely to spread misinformation, if we define misinformation as only who's denying climate change, the right, of course. Who is spreading misinformation? If we're talking about misinformation specifically being, was the assassination attempt on Donald Trump a hoax? That's going to be almost entirely on the left.
Boys, couldn't you almost
a third of Democrats?
Couldn't you almost levy the exact same criticism to the study that you cited? As in, I think that's what JC was bringing up. What are you categorizing as negative? And you're categorizing it as you're just calling out Donald Trump lies, okay? Then yes, you would see a disproportionate amount of negative coverage of Donald Trump. And it's interesting that you don't want to dissect that study, but you want to dissect that specific German study on misinformation. When I believe you, correct me if I'm wrong, we can go through it later, but if you want to do a deep dive on the data on who is more likely to share misinformation globally overall, okay, it'll be on the right.
Well, again, I'd be curious. We should go over that data because every study, real quick, Gibbs, every study, and I've only read through that one German one, but I've been told about other studies and read, just the abstracts of a couple other studies, and every single one appears to have this flaw of what specific thing are you looking for when it comes to misinformation. As to the news story study, they're looking at every single time that Donald Trump is mentioned, and is the article having a negative tone? Is it focusing on the negative elements, or is it focusing on the positive elements? And overwhelmingly, except for Fox News, which is only slightly, it's focusing on Trump in a negative light, and the Democratic candidate in a positive light. Right? Kamala Harris received overwhelmingly positive news coverage. Her
on Fox
strengths,
News?
her strengths were overall. Her strengths were emphasized, despite the fact that she said a lot of shit that you could have, if you ran a news agency, hyperfixate on and criticize her for.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Pentable. So Pentable, do you echo Lactoid's sentiments? I know that earlier you were saying basically all they're doing is whataboutism. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought Sociologic made a good point that it was really based that when he said science can be wrong. Sometimes peer reviews actually contradict each other. Sometimes they get pulled back because they're flawed and whatever. We're all essentially basically wading through infinite information. There's always more information that we can access. So I feel like you guys are kind of getting mad at people just being wrong. Like Lactoid pointed out, there's a totally legitimate reason why people actually say this and they believe it. And even if you think they're wrong, I don't know why you're getting mad at them, or that you think that you're I don't watch anything and think oh, I can just run with this. whether it's corporate media or not. And in fact, when it's corporate media, I think a lot of people do kind of give it an air of credibility because, like, oh, they have to do, like they say on The View, like, we have legal notes and stuff. We have to be more credible than these stupid podcasters who believe in dragons. So, like, I think that in part, well, I kind of just lost my train of thought, but like, I'm getting that, like, there's
People can be wrong; they're not lying.
It's because of podcasting. Oh, it's because of the format. I don't think it's because of the format. I think that people choose to listen to people they like. You know what I mean? And like, I don't think people are like just like, we all kind of treat like the masses like everyone just believes everything they hear. But I don't think you guys like, and I don't think anyone here, and I don't just believe everything that I hear. So it's like
we're doing the same thing. We're doing the same thing the podcasters are doing. We watch, we go on Twitter, we see what's going on, like, we give our anecdotes, we have these discussions, and then at the end of the day, like, some of us are wrong to the other person, but like, we're not wrong to ourselves. This is something we experience, but the experience isn't the mass whole, like, or the mass, yeah, like, it isn't the whole. And so, like, we're in the same loop where it's like, are we lying, or are we just like sharing the information that we believe to be true and we're just wrong about it? And then the people that are watching us, are we lying to them? Are we feeding them misinformation? Or are we just people talking?
So in a segue that using this, right, I personally, I think that one factor that we haven't really even talked about is that there's different like standards of morality on each side. And sometimes people's moralities have trouble accepting certain facts or whatever, you know, whether there's a certain set of facts, whether it's circumstances. And I think that's interesting, which, like, and I think this brings us to the next part of this culture war topic today, which is the healthcare being a human right. I've gone on many panels, and I found it hard as a righty to stomach when people tell me that the government should provide for happiness, for people along with their basic needs, et cetera, or even provide whatever. And I've struggled with this in the debate. So do we think it's because of the morality? Is healthcare a human right? What do y'all think here? Is this part of the culture war? The fact that one side doesn't want it? Do you think the one side does want universal healthcare? What are your thoughts here? We'll start with Tyler here, then we'll go back to circle, and then we'll just open it up again.
All right, I got a couple things from the last thing I want to toss in.
Sure,
here.
you can all segue in.
Yeah. So
we're going to move to that. We're going to move, but at the end, I want that the topic.
All right, so to your question that you asked him earlier, I'd say it's more narrative versus narratives. The facts are objective. How people spin them, interpret them, what facts they choose to leave out in order to form their narrative. That's what we see most people arguing over, claiming it's the fact. Usually they take fragments of effects to form their points, come to their conclusion. It's kind of the same as voting. You should sit in the middle. You should hear out the best version of both sides' arguments before you make up your mind. It's pretty easy to do, and it's pretty easy to see both sides lie to you for political advantage all the time about all sorts of shit, even when it's the side you pick. That was to that. So a lot of it is reading tea leaves. Trump will make a vague statement, let's say hypothetically. And the people that hate Trump will say it's the worst it can be. He's calling for violence. The people that love Trump will spin it as, oh, he just meant it this way and just brush it off. And it's the same thing for every politician. It's just being part of that team. It's a social club in more ways for people at our information level than it is an actual political belief set. They sign on with whatever the club tells them. Now, if you want to get into pushing misinformation, it's who calls what misinformation. Because if you agree with 60+% of the United States, they would say that gender's innate at birth. So if you're part of the 35-40% that disagrees, 60% of the country would say that that's misinformation that you're purveying to push for things that are very unpopular. It is what it is. If you don't like the polling, man, don't take it up with me. I'm just saying, to those people, it's misinformation for you to say this. So it's really, at the end of the day, misinformation is whoever is the judge of what is correct. It's a silly term. It's always been a double-edged sword fallacy. Let's just stick with the facts and then see who's closest to that. It's easiest. As for what you were asking about, give me one more recap of what the...
He just called you Wick, Gibbs.
I know, bro. I was
saying what? What was the subject matter again you were asking about?
Healthcare, human right.
Oh, yeah. So I don't think healthcare is a human right, but I think most of the arguments I hear against it, like compelling people's actions, that's a stupid counter argument. I just don't think it's a human right because, like, at the end of the day, like, you really don't have that right if you're stuck alone in the middle of the woods to provide health care. It's more of it should be part of our social contract, maybe. I just don't like the phrasing is all.
Well, yeah, I mean, the way I would actually approach this is like, because it looks like there's two like fundamental moral sets, and like part of that is affecting what people like see as part of the culture war. So, Corey, go ahead.
I guess I'll try to keep it short. Yes, as as a fellow Canadian with Lactoid, I believe healthcare is a human right.
Misinformation again.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's because, like, yes, I'm not fully collectivist, but there's totally part of me that is partially collectivist. I'm not a hyper individualistic person, and I believe in positive rights to a certain extent. And so, yes, healthcare is a human right.
All right, thank you. Sparky.
Healthcare is in no way a human right because it requires the labor of others in order to provide it. Anyone who thinks that it's a human right has an extra chromosome or maybe missing one. It just makes no damn sense. It requires years and years of training in order to provide this healthcare in a nice and safe manner. And no one owes you their labor because you got an owie. Get a fucking job and get some money. Chase that paper.
All right, Lactoid.
So, one quick quip in the last topic. 1 in 3 Democrats thinks that Trump faked his assassination attempt. Just want to point that out. As to the
Source for the
healthcare,
poll.
I'll post that. As to
Thanks,
the
buddy.
as to the healthcare question, I more or less agree with the idea with what Sparky said. Maybe not as colorful language that he would use, but I think that the human right, when you establish as a human right this idea that you have an entitlement to a service as a human right, what you're saying is that you are entitled to the product of somebody else's labor just because you happen to exist. I think this is the foundational idea of slavery. The idea that just because you happen to be here, somebody else has an obligation to provide you with their blood, sweat, and tears. The reality is regardless of what the service is or the product is, whether it be growing food, whether it be building houses, whether it be providing sex, whether it be providing healthcare, regardless of what it is, the only thing that you deserve is what you can convince somebody to consensually give you. And if you can't consensually convince somebody or convince somebody to consensually give it to you, you don't deserve it.
All right, thank you so much. Clark.
Yeah, I'm gonna do the thing that Tyler did and speak on the last topic real quick. I don't think that truth is a popularity contest. Just because 60% of people don't know what gender is, doesn't mean that like there's not facts around the social construct aspect of gender. And also, I just want to point out real quick how the right lies to you. Earlier, when we were talking about Dr. Fauci, he did say yes. He said what he said because he didn't want to run out of masks. But he also said we didn't realize the extent of asymptomatic spread, which is another reason why he gave as to why he said what he said. There was new information that came out, and he changed his tune. He didn't lie like somebody earlier accused him of doing. He got new information and changed his opinion. Healthcare as a human right, I think that in the society that we live in today, we can make it happen, and it should happen because I think that makes for a better society. I want to see a society where people are taking care of each other, not one where we're just throwing people to the wolves because they're poor.
How does
All right.
asymptomatic spread have
Hold on.
anything to do with droplets?
Hold on. We're gonna do openings, then you can get them. All right, go ahead, JC.
Oh shit! Sorry, I thought you were going in the old order.
No, I just reading it out. I'm sorry.
Gotcha. So yeah, I personally believe healthcare is a human right. As for what is a human right, why would we want the government to protect healthcare, etc. I think that like what is a human right and who deserves them have been incredibly nebulous and shifting over time. I mean, it was less than a century ago that black people didn't get the same human rights that white people did in this country, and obviously now we've learned better for it. The idea that just because something would require the labor of others makes it not a human right is, to me, like patently fucking absurd. Otherwise, why would we ever expect parents to feed their children? As it goes for the United States, the preamble of the Constitution talks about a more perfect union, talks about promoting general welfare, securing the blessings of liberty. I'm not sure, like, if it's lib-cucked of me to say that that does kind of sound like the government is promising to at least keep in mind the happiness of its citizens, and along with that, I would assume would go healthcare.
Yeah, that's kind of my point. Like, I just don't like that you're saying it's a right. I think there's absolutely a way for us to enshrine it in a single-payer buy. There's all sorts of different versions of it. I just don't like that we're calling it a right.
Yeah, just hold on. We'll get through openings. Then you can argue about my specific. Yeah. Let me just get through those reopening. Topic change openings, and then you can take umbrage with whatever word choices I made in there. All you want. Ollie, go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, if a right is something that is given to you by the government because you are a citizen, yeah, I do agree that it should be a right then. So I'm kind of sick of the argument of like taxation is theft and like this is slavery because you're entitled to people's work. That's like I don't love the way that our taxes work. I think they should work better, right? I think we should actually be able to see where our money's going, so on and so forth. But unfortunately, we do live in this system of like us getting taxed. And if we are getting taxed and we are giving money to the government, we should have the government be providing the pay for the doctors that are taking care of the country for us to have a healthier country overall. We should strive for Americans to be healthier, smarter, stronger. That should be like the goal of America as a whole, because like this whole like if you are on the right and you're this pro-gun because you're like, if the army ever attacks us or if they want to fight back against the government, well, if you're fat and lazy and you're unhealthy and you have fucking diabetes, you're not going to be able to fight against the government. You're going to need medicine. You're going to be sick and weakly. We need Americans to be healthy, strong, and smart. That's like kind of the goal. And I don't understand why, if you support this country and you want this country to thrive, you would fight against that. And also, it's not slavery. They're getting paid. We pay taxes. They would then take the taxes and pay the people. They should pay them good wages. That isn't slavery. That's a job. It's just a government job now.
All right. Thank you so much for Temple.
I would say you opened with the rights are something that's granted by the government, but rights are actually things that were protected from the government. It's like shall not be infringed is.
I don't know. The way they're talking about it seems like that.
Clarify the way I see it. So the rights like defending yourself or like they can't infringe on your speech, these are not dependent upon the existence of government. But the healthcare system that we're talking about in this forum is dependent upon the existence of a system of government. So I don't think healthcare, that like way we're talking about, is a human right. But that being said, we share the exact same goals. I just want a sustainable system. I'm not convinced that the private market is incapable of handling healthcare. Maybe it is, and maybe it's not. This people that are older that went through this debate in the early 2000s and all that Obamacare stuff might feel differently, but like I'm just not convinced of that. If the government can do it in a sustainable way, I would be in favor of it. I'm not against healthcare. We share the same goals of like having people be healthy and having access to healthcare. And I want every single person covered under some form of healthcare in the US. I don't want people suffering. I think that's incompatible with the future that we're trying to build, in my opinion. But ultimately, it comes down to what is a sustainable way to do it. And just kind of throwing it at the government saying, hey, you guys can do this. You guys can figure this out, because they're kind of one of those too big to fail entities, is just not sustainable. So I just want to find a way that we can have the best healthcare and have it in a sustainable way. And I'm open to ideas on that. And so I think that's where most people probably ultimately stand. They just kind of have this, like, you know, it's Obamacare, or they're replacing Obamacare and stuff. I mean, it's very open. Like I said earlier in the stream, that we're living through kind of a transitional period. Whatever we do with healthcare in the next 15, 20 years will probably be what we do for 100 years. So we got to figure this out for sure. I don't think we have a good healthcare system, but you know, it's a conversation to have for sure.
Gibbsy,
I think we should get rid of.
Gibbsy, can you define the question a little better? So like, because like Pentemple has oh my god, Tyler have a problem with the word right. Like, what would you guys prefer? Like the question be framed as?
So
in a way?
I think the easiest way to do this is like I'll just openly admit my bias, right? The way I look at it, right? Yeah, I mean, I'm just
want to define so we can
hear me
instead of arguing definitions.
Listen, I'm trying to moderate, but I'll admit where I'm coming from with this, so like I can see that helps frame it, right? So when I've had conversations recently on a lot of panels, and the way things are framed to me often times is like, not only should we provide medical care, we should make sure that people are reaching a certain level of happiness, or that's like an expectation that people think the government should just provide for its citizenry, with healthcare being like the main one that they argue for this, right? And me personally, when I'm looking at this, it's hard for me to fathom, because I'm like, bro, first of all, I should just keep that money. I don't want to pay for someone else to do this. I don't like the idea that the government's there to protect me from other evil governments, and it's there to ensure my liberties, right? That's the way I like it. So otherwise, the more it tries to do stuff, the worse I see it. So I like struggle with the morality concept that, the government should just do this thing for you because it has the ability to do this for you. And this is one of those arguments I feel like people make when it's
real quick.
right.
Wait, real quick, because I wanted to define. Wait, real quick, Gibbs. So like, this is the problem I have with one, the phrasing of the argument, and two, the way it always like ends up happening in like a panel or a debate is that we can't. We got to start from the beginning, which is you want a system of no taxation, which is just not going to happen.
I don't. I'm not a libertarian. I think that. Has
yeah, but like you don't want to pay for it. So like what I'm saying is, and like the argument that for me comes from the left of like why it should be provided by the government is not because the government can do it and the government is just like it's because we already are giving our money to the government, right? If we're already giving a portion of our money to the government, why should we then like not expect that the government have some type of like plan that assists the people that are already forcibly paying in, right? We're not going to eliminate that, but why shouldn't we, with the money that's already given, that should be then like paid into some type of like
insurance? That's why you're here. That's why you're here. You tell me why we should.
In the same way that I know you guys disagree with it because of the money incentive. No, they shouldn't take more. So once again, we can disagree with how the tax system works, sure. But to say that like we're gonna eliminate tax and that's like gonna be the basis of your argument, fuck that. We can't do that. That's just like that's a hypothetical that doesn't exist. And what I'm saying is, I know you don't like this system, but like when you work for a job that provides some type of health insurance, right? Like it should be that like you are like you're compensating the government. You are paying the government's like salaries and so on and so forth with our taxes. There should be some type of insurance plan that comes through the government that is already paid for with our taxes, so that the doctors still get paid.
They'd have to take more taxes.
So, I just real quick want to answer your question. The answer to your question is I'm on board with you if we can do it in a sustainable way. I don't think we've shown that the government can do anything in a sustainable way. The government's losing money on every program that they try to do. Everything they try to do, they lose money on. They're inefficient and they're not good.
It's not meant to make a profit.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. These private healthcare companies presumably have to stay alive somehow. If we do this all through the government, you're at the risk of having a system that is just too big to fail.
It should be non-profit, though.
You're right. Government is not meant for profit, but
I'm willing to let the government do it. I'm willing to let the private market do it. The answer to your question is why wouldn't we let the government do it? We're already paying taxes. I agree with you. That's the arrangement that we would have if we decide to let the government do this. They just have to show that they're going to do it in a sustainable way. That isn't going to cause us.
That's what I think the conversation truly needs to be. Is like reforming taxes, not.
So
no taxes.
Let's have that discussion.
Well, income taxes would be cool.
First, we have to realize the shortfallings. Government sucks. Okay, the DoD alone has failed 7 consecutive audits. They have lost billions of dollars.
I need to speak on that.
Vote better people in. Vote better people in.
We're going to
you can't vote in people. You can't vote in all the bureaucrats that works for the DoD. I happen to be one of them, and I know some of the dumbasses that works for the DoD.
How does that work? How do you not get voted? I truly don't understand. So like, how do you not elect the people that work there?
You do not elect every employee. Yeah.
Well, obviously, you know, but you elect the people that hire. I know, but you ultimately elect the people that hire, right? Like,
no, you elect the executives that run the departments. That's it. And no, they're appointed. Sorry, you elect the people who appoint the people who run the departments.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you vote for better people that are going to appoint better,
voting for better people isn't going to change that because these people who get these jobs have really impressive resumes. The actual problem that exists within civil service and things like that is the bureaucracy behind the ability to let go of these individuals. Okay, there are specific rules that once you're there so long, the joke is it takes an act of Congress to fire a civil servant. It's not wrong. It truly isn't wrong.
Let's go to Lactoid, and then JC. I was busted in the seam, so go to him after Lactoid goes.
So, a definition of rights that was provided by, it was Andrew Wilson who talked about it. I actually thought it was pretty good. A right is a entitlement without obligation. And so when we talk about a human right, it is what a human is entitled to without obligation. If we talk about a legal right, it's what you're legally entitled to without obligation, right? So in the United States, you know, I wouldn't say it's a human right, but you are legally entitled to a firearm, right? You are entitled to that. You are entitled to certain Fourth Amendment rights. You are entitled to certain Eighth Amendment rights, etc. Legally speaking,
Okay.
but perhaps not like as a human, right? What are the sort of entitlements that a person has just by virtue of being a human? And the point that I'm putting forward is, I think that it's wrong to say that by virtue of being alive, by virtue of being a human, you are entitled to the fruits of somebody else's labor
With no obligation.
Wait.
with no obligation specifically,
Yes.
specifically as to. Hold on, real quick.
So if I agree with that definition that you're using,
Then healthcare is
Like-
objectively not a human right.
No,
which is fair, like not a human right, but that's why I
Aren't
want
you-
to define
you're-
what we wanted to use as right.
Aren't you entitled to an attorney though?
Why does it have
Let
to
me-
be a
can
human
I- can I
right for us
explain?
to share the
Hold on,
goals
let Lactoid finish,
My little
and then we'll go to
point.
JC.
you are legally entitled to an attorney because in the United States, that we have that as a law. If we didn't have that as a law, it would not be a legal right to have an attorney, and it wouldn't even be a human right to have an attorney. It just wouldn't be a right at all. We have a
make it
legal right, according to the Constitution of the United States, to have an attorney present during questioning. That's a very specific legal right provided by our Constitution. Now, when I'm talking about entitlement absent obligation,
So legal right to healthcare.
you have to get. You can create a legal right to healthcare. You can
That's what
create
I'm- yeah.
yes, you can create a legal right to.
That's fine. Let's use that definition then. I'm
Well,
okay with
no,
that.
the reason why that definition sucks and why it's kind of pointless to talk about is because you can create a legal right to anything without any justification. I could create a legal right to pasta tomorrow to the point
Yeah,
where the
but we
government,
have
where
one
the government
for lawyers, and we
Or
are entitled to their
firearms,
work, which
or
is slavery. We
homeownership.
don't have to pay. It's non-obligatory to
yes,
us. It's
yes,
free.
and now the
Exactly.
question,
Why
and now,
would that fine?
and
How's
now,
that not
and now,
okay?
and now, the underlying question should be: do you have a human right to being to an attorney? Is it a good
No,
idea?
but we have the legal right to.
Is
so
it a
doesn't
good
matter.
idea? Is it a good idea? And what and why should we have the legal?
But it
right
doesn't
to an
matter.
attorney?
We have
It
it.
does. It does matter because we're trying.
Okay.
We're looking for real quick, Gibbs. We're looking for justifications for what we're arguing for. If we're talking about healthcare, for example, the question is, okay, so you are asserting here that you are entitled to somebody else's labor. Okay, you want to make that the law, and if it becomes law, then legally you have that right. But the question is, why should you be entitled to somebody else's labor in this regard?
Because they're going to get paid for
Okay,
it.
we're going to JC.
And
Go ahead.
Then there you
Now,
go.
nope, nope,
getting paid
JC.
for by whose money?
Yours.
Well,
and paid
I'm
in
gonna-
taxes.
no,
And they're
Maybe
taking my money.
And mine.
Let JC go.
Quick
Agreed to
tease
pursue
and
the
pop mute him.
All right,
I
go
work
ahead,
for
JC,
that
go
money.
ahead. Not
All right. Few quick things here. I'm trying to kind of hang low on this one because I know I'm going to be screaming in the next one. So to pentuple, the only way that you have rights is the government granting them and preserving them and protecting them for you. I'm not sure what kind of society you think that would have no government that doesn't protect those rights for you. It was something that you said a while ago. It's been a while, but I've been sitting here with this. Something you
Rights
said a while
are
ago.
protect you from the government, not
Yeah.
the government
Thank you,
gives
Ali.
That's what
Thank
he
you,
was
Ali.
saying,
Yes. That's.
You also
it's-
wanted to give the Destiny talking point about the DoD failing their audit.
I mean, it's not a Destiny talking point as far as
Just
I'm
make
aware.
the difference between like shall not be infringed type of rights and like
It was
your
my
entitled
understanding
to
that
this.
the
hold on.
reason- it
Are
was
we
my
now saying that
understanding-
the specific debaters are like patented arguments? Is that what
Yeah.
just happened?
I mean, I
Okay.
joked with Gibbs at one point that I was Diet Destiny, but that was a joke.
That's impressive.
I'm way less gay and way less Nick Fuentes dick in my mouth.
Debatable.
To Sparky, watch it, bud. To Sparky, the DoD, yes, my understanding is they failed those audits because they're currently revising the audit process. When they're done with all those revisions, if they're still failing the audits, then I'll be right there with you, kind of screaming at them, railing at them. And then to all the conservatives broadly, do we all think that like owning a gun is a human right? And if so, why is it a human right? And how is it a human right independent of a government structure? Because Lactoid seems to want to draw a distinction between legal rights and human rights.
That's
I don't
a
think
simple-
owning a gun. I don't think owning a gun is a human right. No.
It's
No,
not
I
owning.
actually think it's an
it's-
inalienable right because that's what it's actually labeled
It
as.
comes down to self-defense ultimately. Your right to bear arms covers like using a pipe to kill somebody. I mean, it's like you have the right to defend yourself, and this is something that the government didn't like create for you. It's like you have the right to do this. The government cannot pass a law. That's why we write it in our law, just so the government can't be like, oh, you can't defend yourself. You can always defend yourself. That's ultimately what this comes down to.
Did you say you were a lawyer like previously?
Yeah, I am.
That's actually a really compliments. That's a nuanced take on the Second Amendment I hadn't really considered myself.
But it's also wrong because the point of the Second Amendment was to be
But
able to have a militia to be able
No,
to
it
defend
wasn't.
against.
Shut up.
Yes.
Buddy,
Yes. It's
This is
yeah.
misinformation.
There we go, trying to be nice.
Read the DC cases, misinformation.
Well, yeah,
Wait,
the
so wait,
Supreme
wait,
Court, the activist judges on the
Oh,
Supreme Court
The
changed that.
activist
Sure.
This is what I get for being
Oh.
nice. See if I ever try that again.
Misinformation.
Wait, hold on, hold on. Let me tell me more about these activist judges.
Yeah, the activist judges said that the Second Amendment was about self-defense, and when it doesn't say anything about self-defense in the Second Amendment.
Who are the activist judges? I guess.
Whoever was on the court during 2008, Heller versus DC.
Wait, hold on. Who wrote the Heller decision, and what was their argument?
They argued that the Second Amendment.
Google's loaded right now, boys.
They argued that the Second Amendment was there for self-defense purposes.
But then you have a link for that argument, and then it's
Hold on, it's loaded. It's loaded.
Do I have a link for their
Can
argument?
somebody just? This is stupid.
So it was Scalia. Hold on, I'll explain.
Somebody just read it, please.
I'm a lawyer too. I can explain it. So it was Scalia, and the argument was that when you read the Second Amendment, which is very clear, and if you look through the history of the Second Amendment, this is how it's been classically interpreted, was that the first part was not a normative. It was a descriptive, not a normative element of the Second Amendment. It didn't prescribe anything. It was simply saying, in order to form a militia, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It would be very similar to like, in order to be clean, the right to keep and bear soap shall not be infringed. What does that mean? It means that we're not going to like check you for your cleanness before you buy soap. It's that, you have a right to soap. Ultimately, like the reason why we want you to have soap is because we want you to be clean. We want you to have guns because we want you to be able to form a militia if necessary. But you don't have to form a militia to have a gun. The guns are a prerequisite to a militia. That was the argument.
Is soap a human right or a civil right?
Yeah,
I don't think that anybody has a positive human right to acquire and possess
anything. It is a human right. Please use it.
Okay, so then, do you have a problem with making healthcare a legal right?
Yes. I think, in my opinion, I would like legal rights to reflect human rights as much as possible. And when a legal right conflicts with a human right, I want to minimize that legal right.
So you want to remove the right to a law? You want to remove the right to?
When you say legal right, like I said, it's
want to remove the right to the lawyer. You want to remove the right to the lawyer for citizens?
So I'd be with you.
I want to hear sustainable as well. Answer that question as well. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, answer it. Both of them can answer. They're lawyers.
Yeah, we can make a legal right if we found a way for the government to make it sustainable. But it feels to me like the only reason that the left wants to make this a human right is because then they get to let the government do it at any cost. That we don't have to make it as sustainable. We don't have to care about how it's done. We just have to get it done at any cost. I have the same goals as you. I just want it done in a sustainable way. If the government is capable of doing this, I'm not convinced.
Let me ask you a question.
Given the
hold on, Ollie. I want to ask. Yeah, I will. I will do it.
I know, but I'm gonna have to
eventually.
I do sometimes. Just calm down. Calm down. I got this. All right, just look in my eyes.
I know. I love you.
All right, so for example, because this is what I think you and Lactoid's stances might differentiate. I'm curious. All right, so I know Lactoid, libertarian, avid libertarian he is. He doesn't believe this. He doesn't want his taxes going to it. He doesn't want taxes at all. He doesn't believe it's here. Now, you mentioned earlier, though, that you thought you wanted a reasonable way to do this. Like you have much more like a populist take. Like you could see like envision a scenario where you'd be pro a healthcare by the government.
Yeah, but saying the government's going to present us a sustainable healthcare program is not going to happen. I don't see that happening. But what I'm saying is that's the problem. That I'm not like, oh, we can just say it's a right. Now the government can do it. We don't have to worry about it being sustainable. We can have a system that's losing money, hemorrhaging our economy. Like that's what I want to avoid. I have the same goal as you. I just want to figure out how can we get people access to healthcare in a way that's not too unaffordable. I'm not against people paying for their own healthcare. That's the thing. I think people don't want anyone to have to pay for their healthcare. We're all paying for it in some way. I want the best system. I want it to be sustainable. If the government can do that, show me how. I just don't think that that's possible. But I'm with you if we can. So in principle, if this is a possibility, then let's do it. It's just about sustainability.
Yeah, that's why when I opened, I said realistically, it's like tax reform would be the first thing. Like we would have to arrange it in a way. Like given the system that we have, that's the only thing we can realistically do to get that. I don't I'm not against private healthcare, but like the government should provide access to some type of healthcare for its citizens that can't afford it otherwise. Right? If they're paying taxes because they're working or whatever it may be, they should be entitled to some form, at least
Why?
access to it.
Why, Ollie, when you say should, why should
Yeah.
they? Like,
Okay,
are they
so because I put the onus on the country because honestly, if your citizens can't have access to like healthcare and housing, in my opinion, that diminishes the greatness of your country.
Amen.
Like there should be no reason why in your country that's like that you have weak, homeless, and like dumb. It just makes no sense to me. It really makes no sense to me. We should have like the access to good healthcare so people aren't like sick, right? People shouldn't be self-medicating. We should be able to take care of people, right? And because when I say should, we already pay taxes, right? My taxes shouldn't be going like all over the world, like and just funding wars, right? My taxes shouldn't be like lining the pockets of politicians. However, my taxes should be going to the betterment of the like citizens in the country that I'm paying the taxes to, since these people are meant to be working for me, and I'm already obligated to pay the taxes. Right? Lest we remove the system of taxes, if we have taxes, we should have access to certain things because like part of our constitution, like or I don't know what it, but like the pursuit of happiness. That's like one of the things. You should have the access to the pursuit. You should be able to pursue happiness. You shouldn't be held down in the country that it's written in that you should be able to pursue.
Do you think there's like an ethical problem with people having different levels of healthcare coverage? Like whether they pay for it or not, like having like I'm covered for this condition and you're not, and like you still have healthcare, I still have healthcare, we're both technically covered. Is that like, does everyone have to have the same like health coverage, or can people pay premium to have nicer health coverage? Because that's what I'm saying. I think the private market handles this better.
So here's my thing. I don't think healthcare should be like for profit in general. I don't think hospitals should be for profit. Obviously, like the workers within the hospital should get paid, and I do think they should be getting paid a decent sum. Because I don't think you should look at people's lives and like wager on like if you're gonna make money.
Though, should food be for profit?
I mean, we had food banks, right? So I think you should have access to free food.
Food is for profit.
Free food, yeah.
I can
So
take
I think for the so it depends how. So I think for the vast majority of Americans, they need realistically really basic healthcare, right? Like it's not a majority of people that are just like needing. So what happens is, I think if everyone's paying into this system and they're not using like their funds, it should kind of like be banking up. So like when someone needs like if someone has like a median insurance, right, like a low insurance, whatever it may be, like not the best one, but they've been paying into it for like 10 15 years and everyone's kind of been paying into it for 10 years, and then they get like hit with cancer. Like I think they should be able to get treated for that cancer, considering they've been paying in for X amount, and we have a pool to like use from, right? But I don't think everyone is. So like if you can afford better health insurance, I don't think there should be like a denial of private healthcare. Like you should have access to that private healthcare as well. But I just think that for the people who can't afford private healthcare, that there should be access to healthcare through the government.
I feel like people who tend to have like worse healthcare or no healthcare at all will often put off like preventable like long-term illnesses or injuries or whatever. So let's say you have like a cough or whatever, right? If you don't have health insurance, or you have real crappy health insurance where your deductible is like huge, you're not going to go see a doctor just for a cough. But let's say that 2 years later, all of a sudden it's metastasized into like stage 3 lung cancer. And if you had intervened early when you initially had the cough, they had detected it and they had given you I don't have like super great familiarity with like cancer treatments, but I'm assuming that the treatment for like the interventive at the early stage is cheaper than the late stage interventions. But I feel like getting people to that level, at least, where they're not so worried about just like dying financially to an initial checkup to kind of see what's going on. And yeah, you would find more severe problems, with the increase of these checkups. There would also be an increase of those. But I feel like a lot of these illnesses that progress over time, if we catch them early enough, we can get these people healthy, happy, and back in the workforce where they belong.
All right, Clark, you look like you're ready to go up there.
Yeah, something real quick is that only surprisingly to a lot of people on the left, few hospitals are for profit. It's like 30-something% hospitals are for profit.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think that I know UVA, they're required to spend a portion of their revenue on improving the facilities, so they're not even allowed to like pay it out to so like
That's awesome.
our system has a lot of good things about it. I do think that we need to have a way of covering everyone. That's like the one thing that our system sucks at compared to the rest of the world, is covering everyone. And why should Gibbs's hard-earned money go towards covering my sister's kids' healthcare? Because if we have more healthy people in this world, the society is better off. The kids grow up.
Customers.
The kids grow up to be whatever they grow up to be, and that could end up helping you, Gibbs, in the future, because they could be somebody that teaches your kids or your grandkids or
More
that watch
consumers.
your
healthcare.
stream.
Donate
More-
into the
more
stream.
consumers.
Hold on.
More
We're gonna go to Corey.
viewers.
We're gonna go to Corey, then Tyler.
More viewers.
Well,
Exactly.
just to build upon what was just mentioned, so I'm curious to, let's say, Gibbs and Lactoid. Like, do you think the United States should like pretty much cut all foreign aid, like for humanitarian purposes? Because is that also an entitlement, and that's a waste of your tax dollars? Out of curiosity.
Lactoid, did you want to answer that?
The vast majority. You could maybe find me like a single program that we could work through like all the ethics about it, and maybe I could come to the conclusion that we should do it. But like my general philosophy is every single dollar needs to be justified by some kind of reciprocal or greater gain of consent and reduction of the violation of different human rights. So if you can't prove that with every single dollar, then I'm going to say that those dollars shouldn't be taken from people who are working, because if you, for example, the only difference between slavery and taxes is instead of being 100%, it's only like 30% or 20%. That's really the only difference.
And as for me on that one, I would say it's a case by case basis. Like, I mean, I was watching, what was it, that senator or House Representatives guy that was showing all the waste. He does that list every year, all the wasted things we spend money on that the government passes. And one of them was like, I don't know, some outrageous. I think it was like $1 million or $2 million to studying a language of underground butchers in Paris, France. And it was like, why do we spend like almost $1 million on this? Like, that's outrageous. Like that, I get that. Like, cool, science is cool, but like, is this something? Let France study that, right? Like, if they want, I don't know. That's kind of what. But I would say some of the humanitarian aid I think would probably need to be axed, but like it would be a case by case basis.
Would you go with, let's say, the maybe to narrow down, like food aid out of the question, because like they're not entitled to food aid, just like nobody here is entitled to health
No,
care.
I would definitely
cut it
like
off.
say food aid can be cut. Yeah.
If we get answered,
Because like a negotiating term, like if I get a benefit from it, like I'm not like Lactoid here where I'm like no taxes for anything. If I was gonna see a benefit from something, like why we were giving humanitarian aid to, I don't know, a country that we like were developing economic ties with, like sure I can see it, and if their government was backing our plays, great. But if we're like giving humanitarian aid to a country that just seems to consistently hate us for the last 50 years, then maybe I don't know, you eat your oil and I'll eat my wheat and we'll see who fucking lives longer. I don't know. I kind of that's where I'd be at on that. So it's like a case by case basis. Do you have anything else on that?
I wanted to answer Corey's question again. The same answer again comes. I think Gibbs said it in different words. It comes down to just sustainability. I would cut off humanitarian aid to foreign countries if it's net loss that we're just gonna end up like losing all. Like it's like I feel like
Isn't it technically all a loss?
decide on like buying a car, and it's like we can't afford a Mercedes, but you
Philanthropy is a
go
loss. That's the
line.
point.
Yeah, like that's why I said. So you're on the same page. Like food aid, that's like out, not justifiable. Like that's a loss.
All humanitarian aid is lost, technically.
Well, I don't know.
That's not necessarily true, because it's like and there's things benefits
You
we
said
get
you
for
keep
other
people
countries.
alive.
I agree, but that's not going to convince them.
More viewers, more economy. Like there is a benefit to keeping countries and like not letting people and mass populations die off.
Like we would have less migrants here.
Humanitarian aid.
Okay.
Less
we
brown
already
people
got
would
that.
come here.
Hold on. We're gonna go. Let's go to Tyler. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've been waiting for a long damn time to get in here and talk about
There's a lot of
healthcare.
people here. We're
Oh,
trying
what
to
a
get in
baby.
I'm going to take us back a couple steps to healthcare. So there's a lot of people, like, again, the whole idea of just calling it a right, you can call whatever the hell housing's a right now. There's still fucking homeless people. It's basically at that point a hollow word. You're just taking rights and labeling whatever the hell you want. What we actually could do is set up a system a little different from what we have, but we don't want to change the current system. I hear all this misinformation online about our current healthcare system, which is one of the best in the world in terms of outcomes. If you get cancer, the country you want to go to for the last 30 years is the United States. If you have a heart attack or some sort of fatal heart disease, the country you want to go to for the last 30 years is the United States. We have, if you look at the top 10 most deadly things that kill people prematurely, besides accidents and whatnot, like diseases, the United States has either eliminated them fully from our country, or we lead the world, or in the top 5. The other nations that are even close to competing with us, Canada, Australia, Japan, and I can't remember the last one, a Rick Perry moment. So those countries, most of their medical goods are invented in the United States. The United States leads the world in medical innovation because of the current system we have, where a lot of our money goes to R&D. So instead of blaming our system for this and looking at our prices, I say we look to the socialized countries that are no longer contributing to the R&D.
Can I answer that real quick?
Hold on. Let me finish my rant. We look to the socialist countries that are no longer giving us this R&D money, and we tariff the fuck out of them.
So wait, that point real quick. So like, if we are the country where everyone in the world comes to us, and then we do all the R&D, and we cure all the shit, and then we do all the shit, we shouldn't have people dying of those diseases, right? We shouldn't have people dying of like the cancers. We shouldn't have. Why? If we do all of it, if everyone comes here, if we make all the money, right? Then our people should be good.
We don't have a cure to cancer.
100%.
I know we don't have the cure to cancer.
That's completely unrealistic.
Wait. I'm not saying that they like. Not everyone has cancer, right? But I'm saying that there shouldn't be people who are like not able to afford cancer treatments in the country or that invents the cancer treatments.
That's our version of scarcity. A scarcity exists in the medical field in every single country, regardless of the type of field you have. If you go to a socialized country, they go in front of a panel, they say you're too old to get this treatment, we'd rather use our resources for young people, and they just turn you down. Our version of scarcity is a dollar amount. That's the way capitalism works. If something's scarce, the dollar amount rises up. That's the whole basic law of supply and demand. If you can't afford that treatment, it's because it's so scarce that we can't offer it to everybody. So we use money to regulate that.
But like the treatments that the treatments that people can't afford aren't being like offered to everybody, right? It's being offered to a minority of people.
Well, but I think Tyler's point is that the reason
what do you mean cancer treatment is
the reason it's being offered to a minority of people is like what Tyler's saying is there is a scarcity of that treatment compared to like other treatments. Like I'm gonna guess that like cancer drugs. I mean, look, I watch Breaking Bad. I'll come clean. That's all I know about cancer treatment. But I'm gonna guess like in all seriousness, I'm gonna guess cancer treatment is probably harder to come by on average than like a cough drop. So cough.
No, fair.
Sure.
But so to your point, JC, is like the prevention of getting to the point where you have cancer, right? So like people, Tyler,
less than 1%. Less than 1% in the U.S. of cancer patients refuse all.
That's fine. That's fine. Like that's even like my point. Less than 1%. So what I'm saying is
survival rate for breast cancer.
Oh wait, I guess you didn't refuse treatment.
Oh, did you say there's a 96 survival rate, or what did you?
I think it's a 96% survival rate for breast cancer. Lung cancer is somewhere in the 17% or something like that. Only because lung cancer is so hard to catch.
Tough, yeah.
Whereas it was like breast cancer, it's something like in the high 90s. I'm pretty sure in terms of the rates when they catch it. It's not always about money. Money is just our way of allocating.
That's not dramatically different than most other developed countries. It's the margins are 2 to 3%.
And also, isn't the breast cancer statistic because like women are encouraged to like do regular mammograms as opposed to like other types of detection for cancer? Like guys get the for prostate cancer, right?
But JC, that's my point. Is women are encouraged. Wait. Is women are encouraged to do these things. So it's one, it's preventative, and two, you catch it early on, which makes the ultimate treatment cheaper, right? And I'm saying that, like, if to your point earlier, if everyone just had at least access to healthcare, they'd be able to go in for the like mandatory like cancer checkups once a year. Everyone should have like a mandatory cancer checkup.
Is breast cancer treatment cheaper?
I want to do that. That's the thing.
Let's go to lactose. He had his hand up.
It's radiation you put in your body.
I think you got to be
okay. Fair.
Yeah, I think you go. Well, I wanted to echo that point. That was just made by Tyler. But I think that when you look just look at outcomes, it's difficult. It's not the best metric to look at because every country is a little bit different, right? Not only do certain geographical features influence cancer, such as radium deposits, how much radium you have in your home, but also the genetics of the population stock in any given area can also affect what kind of cancer, and obesity and other lifestyle factors, right? And I think, and I'm going to stand firm on this because, I understand that like among the left and the populist right, there's sort of this acceptance of government involvement in healthcare. but I think that government healthcare is particularly pernicious. I think because it opens the door to a justified regulation of almost any kind of human activity. I think that if you put the burden of my healthcare on the rest of the population, now the rest of the population, I think, has a reasonable say in what I do because they're paying for it. I think that once you have universal healthcare, you have a justification to ban tobacco,
Why is
ban
money
alcohol,
such a thing like that
ban
for you?
burgers. You could ban motorcycles. You could ban everything that I like. Because if I do it, there's a risk that you guys are going to have to pay for the potential negative outcomes of that activity. I think it opens the door door for widespread government regulation, and you see a lot more government regulation in places like Europe and Japan and those other Western countries that have universal health care. The current system, we do, but I'm worried about, again, this is a point I wanted to make to Ali. Just because something happens now to a lesser extent doesn't mean that I can't be concerned about it happening later at a bigger extent.
What I'm saying is that I'm already paying for the smokers that are on my insurance have the same insurance.
No, because you're going to have to pay. Hold on. That's not necessarily true, right? They could be paying more for their treatment, and they often do, because 50% of the population, 50% of all healthcare spending in the United States is spent by 5% of the population. It's incredibly outsized to a small minority of incredibly unhealthy individuals. If you have universal health care, it's, you pay less in administrative costs, but because that expense is spread out, the average person pays more, even when you factor in, them not paying healthcare premiums, just because they have to pay.
Tax smokers more with the universal health care. Like, then we have the exact same system.
So hold on. You can piecemeal certain things, but then here's the problem.
That's what private insurance did.
No, but here's the problem, right? What if I'm a smoker, right, and I want to smoke, but I don't want to be on insurance? Well, now I perhaps have to live in countries where they either tax cigarettes to the point where they're just unfeasible to buy, or New Zealand, they did walk it back because of tax problems. But it was proposed and signed beforehand where they were just going to straight up ban cigarettes. You see this happening in different areas across the world, and I think that Japan mandates exercise in certain jurisdictions. But it sounds crazy. But of course they should. If I'm paying for your healthcare, I want to ban all junk food. I want to ban tobacco and alcohol. I want to have a government jackboot come to your house and make you exercise for an hour a day, because I don't want to pay for the shit that happens if you don't do that. And now you've made me pay for that shit.
Can I ask Lactoid a question?
Yeah.
Is it more important to you to have a healthy, capable workforce, or is it more important to you to have personal liberties?
I mean, personal liberties.
Goddamn right.
Okay, I was just checking.
Like I said, my intro. It was with healthcare, with food, and with sex. If you can't convince somebody to give it to you consensually, you shouldn't get it.
So it is possible to have a public healthcare system and not send a cop to your house to make you actually, you realize we can live in that world, right?
It's possible, but I'm saying it creates the incentive for further government overreach and further government tyranny.
You use one example of one precinct in a country to make to prove your point, but when we've got precincts all over the world with government, some sort of government.
They're generally more regulated than the U.S.
That don't maybe
and they're not
more
sustainable.
They've been sustainable.
Years. So far, yeah, sure.
So wait. So when
we could be down in 150.
So in the UK, in the UK, when it's they banned red dye number 40, or they have less ingredients in there or less chemicals in their foods and in their all that. So you think that's just a bad thing, because why? Where's the bad there?
Wait, that was good.
I just want to know where the bad is there, because if the bad is that someone can't make money off of cutting their food, then I have no problem with regulating big companies and making them work harder to provide better products.
You elected a guy that's going to do that and not give us health care.
Yes, the bad thing is when you limit individual choices and you control an individual liberty, because now you've given society a greater interest in the potential outcomes of my bad decisions, but good for me in whatever respect that I so choose.
So like
Yeah, his
so
entire
people- so-
argument is kind
wait.
of is postulated on like the whole slippery slope. Like
Yeah,
once
I
the
know where he's-
government starts
I know where
caring
he's
a little,
getting to.
it
I know where
starts
he's
caring
getting to.
about
I know where he's
everything.
getting to. I know where he's getting to. But like my question is like we
I thought it was a
see
logical
systems
fallacy,
we see
so.
systems like that are operating in the way that you're worried about, right? So like the UK and Germany and all these like kind of like the other Western countries,
Communist
right?
hellholes, yeah.
I mean, you can call them the communist hellholes, but the people there like
They're not
are
communists.
But it's a
relatively
socialist.
happy, and people when they go there and they visit, they see
a
the
ha- a
outcomes that
house
like
cat-
people are healthier.
Yeah, you're right. A house
Wait, that
cat
people
thinks
are
they're happier
healthier,
too.
and so, but like what you're saying is like Americans need the right to like red dye 40 and McDonald's, right? And like
Yes.
and like ultra processed food. We need
McDonald's,
we need
yes. We have a
the
right
right-
to
wait a
McDonald's.
minute.
Absolutely.
Hold on, hold on,
They're off outside in the wild?
That might be a
right to-
human right, actually. No,
Wait, real quick. The right to being manipulated by countries into eating shit foods that fuck you over in the long term, that then give you these like kind of ailments that lead you to having that lead you to, yeah. So like we the right to that is important, but the right to like the healthcare treatment that we get from all these big companies, like why do these big companies have the right to make immense amounts of money on you while cutting your food?
I'll explain the very distinct difference here. When you're talking about
Yeah.
like why is this different from the right to healthcare? I'm advocating for. I'm not saying the government should mandate McDonald's and provide McDonald's. I'm saying that a person should have the personal liberty and the right to engage with their own life and engage with the people that they want to and consensually interact with people. And if they want to go buy McDonald's or if they want to ride a motorcycle or if they want to buy tobacco, that is their business.
You're okay with suicide cults?
When you say yes, MAID is great. I actually agree with MAID. Canada's based in that one specific regard. And when I think that people should have the right over their own life, because when you're saying that they don't, you're being paternalistic. You're controlling them.
Well-
And I'm not a child. I'm an adult, and I shouldn't have to live under the thumb of a government that thinks it knows better than me. And I especially shouldn't have to live under a government that now has a justification to do so because they have to pay for the negative outcomes potentially, as opposed to me pay for the negative outcomes. And by the way, we already do this. We already. One last point. One last point.
So other
One
people-
last point. Last point.
The other way around.
One last point. We already have like a partially like this is unfortunately already mostly the case in the U.S. where we have like this base level of healthcare that people just pretend we don't have. If you don't make enough money, you qualify for Medicaid. If you're too old, you get Medicare. You get healthcare in the U.S. It's the people who are making money that like pay for healthcare. Of course. Same thing with food stamps.
I'm talking
You're basically
about that it should be
advocating for
cheaper
just
for them and they should
you're just
have
saying
better
food should be
access.
free
Well,
for
it's
everybody instead of having
expensive.
food stamps.
Okay, all right. I'm going to Tyler and then Double, and then we'll go from there.
I just
And
wanted
then
to throw
JC,
in-
JC, and then
I just wanted to throw in that a
Back
single
here,
payer-
back to me. What are we talking about? I didn't.
All right,
yeah.
we'll come back
I
around.
don't
Just go
I
ahead.
don't have much left. I just wanted to throw in a single payer optional buy-in plan, the Hillary Clinton plan, the one Joe Biden pussyfooted with and never actually tried when he got into office. That would solve most of Lactoid's problems because single payer program in a lot of ways would pay for itself, and we could shift over a lot of other subsidies from different programs that would be eliminating in setting this up. So like Medicare, Medicaid could go away if we had this single payer program, for instance, and things like that, and poor subsidies as well. And on top of that, it would just allow people that don't qualify for Medicaid now to sign it. People that don't want to deal with health insurance companies that want to go through the government to sign it. Why not just make it an option? It's really like
It's just a
there's
government
no
company.
Yeah, but there's no good counter arguments to say.
No.
Like,
Here's the
let-
counter
hold on.
argument. They're not going to be just taking money from the people who are paying in if it's the government. They're going to fuck something up, run into a shortfall, and instead of going bankrupt, which is what any company should do, they're just going to raise taxes on other people that aren't not involved. That's what's going to happen.
Subsidize them like we do for other companies that
Okay,
just make
so-
millions and millions of
Hold
dollars.
on,
I'm against
we're
corporate
running-
subsidies. Cut them all.
We're running
we
on
do
time
it
here. Hold on.
already.
And we shouldn't.
Alright.
This panel is
Hold
on
on.
what should or shouldn't be.
Stop.
I mean-
Okay. Shh. All right. I'm gonna let Pit Double and JC go. Make it quick, boys, because we're gonna
I'll be
do
quick.
closes here. We're like lightning round, the end of time here.
I just
Right.
wanted to clarify to Ali. I would support Red 40 bans. I would support banning McDonald's if it was like this obviously provably horrible thing. I think that Lactoid disagrees here with me, and I think this probably overlaps. The Lactoid might be the type that thinks we should legalize things like heroin and like legalize all drugs. Like if people want to consent and do it, then let them. I don't agree with that. I am a bit of a statist, I guess. I think generally we can agree we don't want society engaging these things. We can pass a law and decide that society can't have heroin for obvious reasons. So I feel the same way. Like if we could ban these bad foods, and so I actually don't know where that tangent came from, but I just wanted to respond to that because like I am all
You
in
want to
favor
ban
of
McDonald's, Pentuple?
Me and
No,
you can
Hold on,
bridge
hold
build,
on.
brother.
We're going to
can
Jason.
prove that McDonald's
Lactose
was
doesn't
like
like bridges because taxes
switching
pay
to
for
your
them.
health. First, I would say regulate it.
Gonna
You know what I
ban
mean? Find a way to
burgers.
regulate it so that they
Jesus
can't do this. If burgers were heroin, yes.
All right,
They
JC,
kind of
go
are
ahead.
a little bit.
Yeah.
And
So
after him,
Eating them, clearly.
I'm just curious if Lactoid is in favor of legalizing murder, and if not, where he's drawing his line on when the government can enforce negative infringements upon rights to increase the idea or the amount of positive rights resulting from it.
It's not about increasing
Consent is
positive
the
rights, it's about
line.
minimizing the
Well, it's
violation of
pretty-
negative rights. If you murder somebody, you're
Consent-
violating their negative rights.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if
is
I get to
really-
murder you and steal all your shit, I'm increasing my personal wealth. I'm enriching myself. I'm taking my freedom and my
Yeah, but you're
firearm that
violating
I
my
have to
negative
enrich
rights.
myself.
Lactoid doing drugs doesn't
Enriching
have an external
yourself,
influence.
enriching yourself is not like a justification. Like preventing somebody from violating negative rights, that
But
is a justification.
then
for
why
a
are
law.
you opposed to taxes?
Victimizing him.
Because you're violating my negative rights by taking away the things that I worked for without my consent.
You're violating my negative rights by not allowing me to have comprehensive health care.
You're defining a
Lactose
positive
having
right.
That I fund with my taxes.
You are arguing for a positive right, not a negative
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
You are saying
Well,
that
it's negative because it
you
makes
have a
me
right
feel
to
bad.
you are saying you have a right to somebody else's thing. In this case, healthcare. I'm saying that you have a right from somebody else coming in and infringing on you, aka murder. That's the difference.
All right,
Do
fantastic.
you pay your
We're gonna-
taxes?
Hold on, here's what we're going to do now.
Unfortunately, because they have more guns than I do.
Oh,
Oh, good. Okay, good.
all right, boys. All right, we got 5 minutes left. Here's what we're going to do. We're
For
going to
now.
go. We're going to start from the bottom. We're going to do closings and then outros or whatever because we got 5 minutes left. So let's wrap this up here. Let's do this. So I'll start with Pentuple this time. You give a closing, give us an outro.
Hey, I'm Pentuple. I am a conservative, and I stream on Twitch, and you can find me pretty much all over the internet under the name Pentuple TV. And thank you, Gibbs, for having me, as always. I think it's like the 4th straight week. It's been fucking awesome, and you're killing it. And well done. And that's my closing.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Ollie, thanks for coming.
Yeah, I'm just always surprised at the like defense of like multi-billion-dollar corporations and like conglomerates and never the defense of like just like the civilians, really. Like the people, the common citizen that you actually share society with versus the other people who do not look at you one way or another, right? And don't care. But the common man will care about you, right? And that is the person you should probably reach your hand out to. But yeah, unfortunately, me and you, Pentuple, we can build bridges, but like I said earlier, Lactoid doesn't like to build bridges because taxes have to pay for them. So
Private toll bridges. Go ahead.
There you go. JC?
Yeah, I think it's funny that Lactoid is okay with the government infringing upon his positive right to live free of murder, and infringing on my positive right to provide for myself and my family through whatever means are necessary, possibly by murdering people and stealing their shit. It's just weird. The whole ideology of libertarianism is like completely nonsensical. They just draw these lines completely arbitrarily. But in any sense, I'm Big JC. I'm gonna be streaming on YouTube and Kick. I suck worse at League than I do at debating. So if you want to watch if you want to laugh, come watch me fail.
All right.
Pentuple. I know it's you with the soundboard.
I think he's deafened. So, but
nah.
go ahead, Little Cluck.
I'm Liberal Cluck. I'm just here to debate conservatives. Lactoid, you and I want a one-on-one with you. I specifically want to talk about
Or debate or something else.
Host it, Gibbsy.
It
Host
doesn't-
it.
whatever
Whoa.
Lactoid,
Second
whatever
Amendment?
Lactoid wants. We could talk about Second Amendment, but I was actually more interested in Donald Trump's New York case.
Sure.
Oh shit, the Her Report thing. We got that too.
Yeah, I'm super interested because I think it was Gibbs who actually told me that you think that this the whole thing was just a
I'm
political
making
hit
friends
job.
everywhere.
The New York case is ridiculous. Complete stupidity.
Okay.
But go ahead.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, if y'all want to do that, I'd definitely like to host that. Yeah, we make that happen. Yeah, then we can all vote and see who's the winner. And we have
Never mind.
We're gonna put some real stakes on the line now, boys. I'm just kidding. Or am I? Anyway,
down.
go ahead, finish that club.
Oh,
That-
I'm done. I'm done. Yeah,
Oh.
I just wanted to challenge Lactoid.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much. We'll figure that out. Lactoid.
couple responses here. Ollie, I think that when we were talking about this sort of populist position of, well, why are you supporting these corporations or these people that you'll never meet? When you really, we should go to Main Street and shake hands with the plaid wearing blue collar American, right? The person who's
White
got your
tees and
back.
jeans, baby. White
Yeah,
tees and jeans.
absolutely, with jeans, denims, like the guy that you can trust to fix your lawnmower.
New Balance 550s.
New Balance, that guy. Well, I actually think that advocating for a policy that you don't personally benefit from is actually a pretty good evidence of a principled position, whether it's right or wrong. And I advocate for personal liberty, even in situations that I don't benefit from, because I believe in the principles themselves, not just whatever benefits Lactoid. I think that I've got a lot of disagreements with, I think I'm probably most closely aligned with Sparky on this panel when it comes to the arguments we've had here today. Because even, it was typical from the left, the sort of pro-government arguments I was getting. But I should have known, Pentuple, as a right-wing populist, pro-government statist, that you would have the terrible arguments too. And I think that it's right-wingers like, because I forget sometimes that you exist, okay? Because I guess maybe I was too idyllic during the Trump train when you have Doge and Elon Musk and everything. But I forgot that a large contingent of conservatives are the reason why marijuana is still illegal, and the reason why hey,
I didn't say that.
Well, I think people who think like you are the reason why it's illegal. I mean, you might not think marijuana specifically.
That's true. That is true. They think marijuana is horrible.
Yes, they think marijuana is a problem. Like, and we should ban drugs. We should prevent people from doing it because it might hurt them. I just fundamentally don't have that view. My body, my choice. The government shouldn't be telling me I can't put a plant into my own body.
No, this is the government.
I don't
It is
like
our
drugs.
society agreeing that you can't do this.
Society agreeing and then using the force of the government. Look, society in Germany decided Jews shouldn't be there. It doesn't make it right. Okay?
I don't know that you
shit.
have a human right to access heroin.
I know. You're repeating status talking points.
I feel like this is where me and Ali would link up, because like, don't you want to this is all in pursuit of like a healthy population. If you legalize this, you're gonna have way more people engaged in it. That's just the numbers, and that's my reason for it. I'm not worried about the liberty or the individual right that a person has to heroin.
Scott of this path.
You're not worried about. Okay, I'm going to finish my closing real quick. You're not worried about.
Worried about the individual right to heroin.
Right. Hold on. We can cut it off right
heroin.
there. No. We can cut it off right there because that's what's important.
Why would we cut it off there?
Because that's what's important.
I do care about individual rights.
Because that's what's important.
Trump didn't say peacefully.
Do you support driver's licenses,
Lactoid? Before then, Lactoid.
You're at some point a citizen.
This is my closing. I have.
Let him finish.
Like the government, I monopolized this time.
Yeah,
I monopolized time. If you want to talk shit about me, you should have done so during your closing. Sorry. The populist right. Look, we supported Trump together, but we still have disagreements, and I think that we're going to continue to have disagreements, and I think that we need to allow adults to really do what they want with their own body, whether and we shouldn't obligate people to pay for their decisions of what they do with their own body, because obligating somebody else to give some from what they do to something that somebody else does is a violation of their bodily autonomy as well.
Can we make it illegal to manufacture heroin?
Should businesses have to pay their workers?
Absolutely not.
Wait.
Absolutely not.
Hold on.
Last part of my closing.
Oh, maybe do it. Okay.
Last part of my closing. Can I?
Holy God, bro.
Well, to be fair, I've been cut off a little bit.
Okay.
I'm 100% down to debate the Trump New York case. I've looked through it. One thing I will say though, and just in preparation, I'm going to demand that anybody who wants to debate me on this, they have to tell me what exactly Trump specifically did wrong and what he should have done to avoid the charges. That's what I need from somebody first before we even begin to debate whether or not that case was bullshit or not, because I find 90% of people can't even elaborate on that.
Fantastic.
What about the Her report?
I'm down to host it if you want. Y'all want me to host it? Y'all, we can figure that out. Y'all let me know if they meet your standards, Lactoid, so we can set this up and I can get some.
Well, I know I don't, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, and Lactoid's absolutely correct. If you want to talk shit about somebody in your closing, do it, because skill issue if you don't, right? Fuck all you bitches. I'm just kidding. Sparky, go ahead.
I just find it ridiculous that people think everything is a fucking right. No one owes you anything. The rights listed in the Constitution are considered inalienable, meaning they're provided by God and guaranteed by the government. They're supposed to protect the rights. I think it is stupid to think that anyone who thinks the government is the answer to anything obviously has never paid attention to anything government does. And yeah, it's an ignorant argument coming from absolute children who have never done anything in their fucking life.
All right. Thank you so much. Corey.
Yeah, what I will say is I love to see the turn in Lactoid's expression where I started what a roller coaster ride of like talking about inalienable rights, but then as soon as God is mentioned, that huge cringe. They were reinforcing his notion there's clear disagreements there that I know Lactoid, I would say Lactoid is in the right position there in terms of where the rights are coming from, and probably not from a made-up God. But what do I know? I'm just a child. But what I'd also like to say is thank you so much, Gibbs, for inviting me. Grateful to be here. I definitely like to see the Canadian representation with my friend Lactoid. Always going to advocate for that. But you can find me on Twitch, CoreyCampbell84, Twitter, X, YouTube, Instagram. It's Corey Campbell. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. And Tyler.
Hi, I'm Average Debate Enjoyer on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. I'm a 90s Democrat back before they were crime deniers, pro-illegal immigration, and didn't understand what the term gender meant. So anyone that from the 90s generation, you can probably vibe with that. I'm happy to come here and be right about everything I said and win every argument I had with all of you, so you're welcome for that. I'm happy to come here and defend these massive billion-dollar companies because I and all of you know that those companies only become rich because us individuals give them our money willingly through individual transactions to the point where they rise to the top because of the ultimate great service or good that they provide for us that moves our society forward. Now, I'm going to attack the libertarians real quick on inalienable rights because they're retarded. The Constitution grants you those rights. The rights are whatever the Constitution says they are. And within that very same Constitution are mechanisms to alter or remove those rights that you say are inalienable. And they would be pretty alienated if they were removed due to the mechanisms written into the Constitution. So I don't think they exist. That being said, healthcare doesn't fit the definition of the word right. We could absolutely go ahead and make it universal without making it a right. As for 1v1 debates, I'm going to throw my challenge out there. The inception of Crossfire Hurricane was worse than the inception of Trump's false elector theory on 2020 in January. So if anyone wants to take that one up, come at me.
You know what? Here's what we're going to have to do, I think. I'm just going to make the Gibbs 1v1 series, and we're just going to have fucking tournaments. That's what we're going to fucking do, I think. Because
That's a great idea.
Wait,
so if any of y'all do that, I know y'all stole it from me, but that's what we're doing now.
No, I want you to mod.
So the forcing.
All right, I'm done moderating now. Y'all can go argue about anything you want.
All right, so I just have one real question. Okay,
and anybody got to leave, y'all can leave. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. Y'all the bomb.
So like,
I'll stay
because your definition of like what you approve of kind of relies on consent. That seems to, I think that's your line, is like the ability to consensually convince someone to do something for you should be all you need to have them do that thing for you.
My Discord profile picture says maximize consent for a reason. Yeah.
Base. All right, cool. So, is like the removal of slavery and forcing people to pay for work like an imposition on a right, or is it like
fuck, why didn't I think of that one?
You know, I'm like you have to are you entitled to my work for free?
Slavery. So I put taxes in the same category as slavery.
Yeah,
you are
correct.
You are using force. You are violating somebody's negative rights over their own body, because that's one of the foundational rights. People have a right over their own body.
Yeah,
you're violating that right and then forcing them to do shit for you.
Am I not doing that by forcing business owners to pay their workers for the compensation of the products that they sold?
No,
like I'm forcing you to pay.
Well,
and
like when you say forcing, like you shouldn't like mandate a specific like amount. But if two people agree, I will give you this amount if you do this specific thing. That's now you've made it consensual.
But you can't do it for free, right? The reason there's a minimum is because we disallow people to like have slavery, right? Like you are not allowed as a business to have slavery.
The problem with slavery.
Hold on, Ali. Not
the money that you earn is entitled to the workers a little bit.
You have slaves wherever you want, as long as they're in Africa and South America. All right.
The problem with slavery is not the amount that's being paid, like even because arguably.
I love you guys. Good night.
Okay, good night. arguably, so I mean, slaves were compensated in some regard, right? They were provided food, housing, etc. But the reason why slavery was wrong is, even if the slaves were compensated with actual money, it doesn't matter. They're being forced to work at something against their will. They're being violated.
I know. And my question: aren't you being forced to pay your workers? Like, don't you you literally legally have to pay your workers?
I don't think. I don't think you should have to. I don't think you should have to. If people want to volunteer for your company, they should be allowed to, and you should be allowed to accept those volunteers.
They can.
So then you don't have to pay them.
You can volunteer and work for a company, but you can't do it you can't do it for like 60. You can't volunteer 60 hours a week for a company if you
should be able to. If you're an adult, you should be able to. You should.
So indentured servitude, cool with you?
I don't think that's indentured servitude.
Like someone's like, all right, I don't want to work for money, but I'll live in the shack.
Yeah, that's fine. In fact, I actually think that that's a perfectly fine arrangement. If I'm like, hey, I'll do some work around the house for you, but I need a place to live. Can I stay in your spare bedroom? And as payment, I'll do work around the house. Perfectly fine arrangement. I got no problem with that.
I'll feed you.
So what I'm saying is the reason we
also fair arrangement.
The reason pay is mandated, right?
Not
is
someone say the best arrangement. Don't.
My assumption would be that the reason pay is mandated isn't because of it's consent, because you work in a country, you should go work and then get paid for that work and then buy into the system, and that's why you're mandated. It's not so much of the consent agreement or disagreement, because my question to you is do you think it's inconsensual to tell someone that they have to pay for work? And that's a system
I don't. Because look, I mean, less than 2% of American workers make minimum wage. So this means that the vast majority of people who are working, the business is paying them because otherwise they're not going to show up.
Yeah.
You are offering money. And if you can find somebody who will show up for no money, good for them, I guess. But now this person, first of all, this person's going to be getting some kind of compensation to afford food, or they're not going to last very long, just biologically speaking, right? So there is some set floor on what kind of compensation you can offer. And as long as people consensually agree with that, I'm fine. With it, we have minimum wage right now at $7.25. One thing that is true, that it's very low. It's like nothing, right? But we haven't had to raise it, and yet the vast majority of people make way more than that. You can't even find workers for $8 an hour these days.
Well, that's because you have local minimum wages as well. But I would also want to make the argument that the minimum wage existing actually takes negotiating power away from workers at that level. Because if you have a Wendy's, and I remember when I went to get my first job, there was a Wendy's, a Burger King, and a gas station, right? And I went in, and they all offered me $7.25 because that was just the basic starting minimum wage at the time. This was 10 years ago. But it's there's no negotiation power when they all know if we all just offer the lowest, then there's no negotiation power. They have to take one of the jobs. It benefits the businesses, actually, not the employee. I would argue if they didn't have a minimum wage, I would go in. They wouldn't know what the floor is for all of them to offer. They could say, I'll give you $7.25. And I'll be like, well, Burger King said $8. And then they're like, oh, shit, we actually do need to get some people to agree to work here. And then I think that returning the negotiation power is more of a concern than having a minimum wage.
Honestly, both of those, the one that thought and then that statistic, I honestly might be along board of removing the minimum wage then, actually, because I kind of agree now that it does remove the bargaining. For me, I've never gone I've always had a skill where I was able to negotiate my price. I'm never going anywhere and just accepting whatever base, unless I'm going to start somewhere and try to work my way up. But that's because I had the skill. But I guess
right.
Fuck,
and it slowly works up too. It slowly works up too. If you remove the minimum wage, you might not see people go get $8, $9, $10 an hour immediately. But all of a sudden, Burger King's going to say, "Look, we just bumped this from $7.25 to $7.75. We can get the next 3 people that need jobs that come around here." You know what I mean? We can get that. And then now the other businesses are, no, we got to get to $8, and it slowly works its way up.
And they are not paying. By the way, these fast food restaurants, they're not paying $7.25 anymore, right? Even though legally, even in places where they legally could, even in places where they legally could, they're still paying $15, $20 an hour because people just aren't going to show up and work for that. They can't find
Lactoid. This is true. I'm gonna reach over to you, Lactoid, real quick. I am living in Massachusetts. Fuck tax. Jesus Christ! I understand why people live in red states.
Yeah,
I understand why people live in red states. I completely understand. And for the record, I'm not pro. I understand why taxes are to an extent necessary, right? To have a functioning society. I think it is. But the way that we do it, I completely agree that it's you are just to an extent like robbing. You are just robbing people. I don't see the positive outcomes that I would want to see from the tax systems, right? So like I agree with you completely. Like I just wouldn't know how to begin to like actually reform anything. But like what
Here's
do you
what I would do. I can tell you what
really?
Yeah, here's what I would do.
Don't tell me no taxes, please.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Because
All right, cool.
because look, I'm unlike Scott. I'm not an anarcho-capitalist because
Mhm.
I think that any kind of moral system is predicated on the concept of order. You have to have some kind of societal order, and you need to have some kind of like I don't think that we can. It's a good society or a consensual society even to have McDonald's and Burger King firing ICBMs at each other in order to maintain like their hegemony over specific neighborhoods. We can't have that, right? So we have certain rules. We have certain rules.
Can we
McDonald's,
not have-
you're not
no,
allowed
big
to buy
time.
ballistic missiles. McDonald's.
Logic, Gibbs.
Yeah, you're not allowed to buy.
I want. See, that's the future I want.
See,
though,
Gibbs
for the record.
Gibbs saw Mad Max and said, "That's what I want to see." I
He
saw
said,
Mad
"Based,
Max
I
and
wanna
I
control all the
thought that was
water."
a good movie, but I really don't want to live in that kind of society. I would start by cutting the taxes that I find to be the most, to be the worst in terms of infringing upon people and removing I'm focused on removing disincentives for things that I find to be valuable. So I'm going to start by removing income tax because I want people to work. And the idea of taking people's money is like it very directly feels like slavery. I'm going to remove I'm going to remove sales tax in order to reduce the floor of demand or
consumerism.
the demand, which is going to increase, which is going to cause a less market interference, which is going to create a more efficient marketplace. In fact, and I would start moving up the chain, and I would remove all taxes eventually, except for two. I would keep one tax, and I would implement a different tax. I would remove every single tax in the whole country except for the death tax. I would leave the estate tax, and I would implement. I know.
Why? Come on.
Hold on. And I would implement a land value tax.
You were so close.
And I would implement a land value tax. Those are the only two. Those are the only two taxes. And with these two taxes, we would pay. With only these two taxes, we would pay for every necessity the government would have to provide.
God damn it, bro! Like
See,
I'm
more of a-
before you go on. I want to say something. I was sitting here watching this, and I know that when we go on these panels all the time, like I feel like I'm the closest to like the MAGA rep on a lot of panels, even though I'm not like really a MAGA guy because I'm not as much of a populist. I'm more of like a reform.
Temple has MAGA Christmas in his profile.
Yeah, he's got MAGA Christmas. So
that's me. I'm taking it. I'm owning it. I'm branding it as mine.
So yeah, what's interesting to me is because you make a lot of arguments, and like those arguments would appeal to like someone like Pentuple, right? Like Pentuple, like would probably be able to build a bridge with you on a lot of your shit, and that's why when I was studying vote Republican, I was like, see, we have people under the umbrella already. Yeah,
Fuck
you.
estate tax.
Yeah, because you and Pentuple have very similar takes on a lot of stuff. You're like, oh, why can't we do that? And the question MAGA people are asking is, yeah, why can't we do that? Why aren't we doing that? And like, so like that's why I kept telling you. You know, you should come over to our side.
I'm not gonna lie. The only thing right now
we have to come to
preventing every Arab and Muslim from going
Israel,
Republican is Israel. I promise you, if you put a restraint or two, a good notion, a good word out, you'll have the vote on the Republican side. I promise.
What if we just said let them all like do whatever the fuck they want over there?
Yes. You honestly, yeah. If you go, yo, fuck it,
that is our position, though. I feel like that is the MAGA position.
It isn't. Like, unfortunately, it's
not what he's gonna do.
Well, you're talking about like the Republican Party versus like APAC, MAGA, right?
That APAC money's too.
That MAGA hates APAC, though. MAGA hates APAC.
Trump doesn't, though.
Well, but Trump is playing a very dangerous game right now.
Well, I know, that's like the one thing. That's like the frustrating thing I think for a lot of the ethnic minority, like the people who vote Democrats, right? Is that there is this like pervasive assumption of like Islamophobia, racism from the right, right?
Like, why do you think that? Like, why do you think Republicans love money? You know what other group of people loves money? Arabs. You know who
the
like
Saudis?
I know. Arab. Yeah, bro, you're telling me I've never seen people that got along better than a Texas oil man and a Saudi prince. Like them fuckers get along real well.
I agree.
This Texas guy's crazy. The other guy's like, I don't really understand what's going with the dresses, but they like money and they like tigers. And I like both of those.
It's just your guys' influencers are like so loud against like the people who tend to like support, like, right? So it's like. Again, the assumption is homophobic. like and racist, right? This
Are you
is
thinking
the-
of Ben
these are the
Shapiro
only
or
two-
Candace Owens?
That's because the left.
Yeah,
pushing that
it's Ben
narrative.
Shapiro. People are like kind of like Ben Shapiro.
Fuck Ben
This is the
Shapiro.
right, right?
Yeah, but all
And
I'm
it's-
trying to tell you is the
yeah.
left is the one pushing that narrative when the reality
I
of
agree.
Republicans are like, we don't give a shit about none of this shit they're saying.
I agree. It's just the influencers that you guys keep saying. They keep saying blacks.
Who is you?
They
Who
keep
is you
saying
guys?
these fucking
The
Arabs.
black.
Yeah, who are these? Who are these influencers?
Like
that
Charlie Kirk.
You guys.
Charlie Kirk, right?
We
Like,
love blacks.
You guys
Guy.
need, like Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is right now probably the best like person to gather people and move them over to the right because he has a lot.
Tyler,
of people
you gotta
to the
drone
left
out your
that are in the
window.
middle. Right, he's a lot of people in the middle. I can tell you, like a lot of people like him, and he is going to be the movement for like a lot of the people on the right because he's having the conversations, and he's willing to be like, yeah, people they think the right is racist, and then the people can defend themselves. But like, once again, I don't think we're going Democrat for a nice while, man. You guys are gonna have a nice fucking ride for a minute.
Well, you
I can tell you that.
No. Kamala only
Convert,
lost
like-
because she had only 3 months. She's gonna do it this time.
No,
this
the
is still
Dems have lost. The Dems have lost a considerable chunk of their vote, man.
You got 4 years, and it was only about 200,000 votes in 3 states that won this election. You could easily swing that back. I think personally, Elizabeth Warren. If the DEI Kamala pick didn't force Elizabeth Warren out of Joe Biden's number 2 spot, like he said he wanted for years, then I think she would have actually won 2024. Because Kamala
You're insane.
I don't know.
Are you saying she would have been in the primary?
What are you saying?
Or she would have taken the same Kamala route?
Have you seen the fertility difference information, by the way, Tyler?
Yeah.
Nobody's winning the Kamala route.
No. So here's the thing, Tyler. It's not about how much like the right won by. One, it's the loss of votes on the left, and then if Trump does do like a good 4 years and people do actually see some like money in their pockets and they see things get like maybe a little bit, maybe not things get cheaper, but they can afford the expensive things, right? They can afford the things that are now
And Project 2025 doesn't happen, and he's not a dictator.
Yeah, if all the shit that the Dems talked about, like the right, and he's a dictator, if none of these things happen, and then we just see like a bit of money come in, and we don't see like rampant homophobia and like sexism or whatever, like which you're probably realistically not going to see, then honestly, the people who didn't vote Dem
I'm saving it for June.
that believed all that shit on the right, if they see this progression on the right being like positive for them, you just earned that vote.
The people are goldfish, man. You stop talking about Trump being a fascist in 3 months, they forgot you were ever talking about it at all. In a year, you got to go find articles to remind them. No.
You gotta find articles to remind them what Fauci said.
The left is infighting right now, dude. Like it's coming from someone who votes Democrat, who like.
Well, but their whole
I can tell you right now, they have lost it. They no one agrees with each other within that. Like the left, all the whole I left the left, right? There's a whole spew of it. If the Republicans can prove a solid 4 years, that party will gain all the voters that the left lost.
So so this is kind of what I was trying to get at in the panel, right? Like there's like a lot of people on the left that'll just call fact. They'll be like, oh, it's a fact. And then when a conservative's like, I take umbrance with this issue, like fact, like I want to go and ask the questions about it, they'll immediately be like, oh, now you're saying it's pseudo facts, it's all facts, right?
Yep.
Same thing with it. It seems to be like, you didn't say this, but it's almost like what they're saying, the shit they're saying doesn't stick, right? Like they're like, okay, the Trump's a dictator. It's like, okay, cool. But even so much it's like, oh, Trump's gonna start World War III. Well, what the fuck are we in now? And when Trump didn't have anybody invade Ukraine while he was president, and it seemed like he was withdrawn outside of other countries, and now the world seems more chaotic than it's ever been. And their argument's like, oh, Trump's gonna be the one that guys pulls the trigger. I feel like a lot of this shit is just like, I think people are just like, they're wise to it. Like, like, I don't know. It seems you can only lie to somebody so many times before they're like, okay.
So I've been saying this is the Democrats are focusing on like 10% of Americans, maybe, right? They're focusing on 10% of Americans, and then the rest of the rest of us, the more center Dems, right? We're looking at it, we're like, hey, like, there's a limit to how much we care about like these fringe topics, and you guys keep calling the right liars, and you keep doing this, but then we're seeing more and more like Anna Kasparian, just the whole thing where it's like you can't say anything about the right unless they get called racist. Honestly, it's a lot of the fact is the left thinks the right is stupid.
It's wild.
The left thinks the right is stupid.
Bro, we just went through an election where for 2 years we were gaslit about Joe Biden's age.
Wait, did you see the new report on that?
So true.
There's a new report on that, by the way, where the White House aides said just recently that the cognitive decline began very quickly, actually, after he began his second term, and that it was within 12 months that they began to notice significant declines.
That's where
That's
it started, right?
crazy.
It started there for a lot of people on the left that were like, hey, like we want to fucking try to support you, but the guy that you're quoting to us is fucking like losing his mind. That whole sweep under of just giving us Kamala, like feeding us Kamala, was the absolute worst. And then
There
she
was
ran
no way
No
she
way,
could
and
win
she-
because. Go ahead.
she
Sorry,
just
I don't
ran
wanna-
coup.
she ran the absolute worst campaign
Ali, do you
ever.
think anybody could have won in that situation? Because I do agree she ran a terrible campaign, but I also think that as soon as they swapped her in, that's when I started running victory laps because nobody can win in 3 months. It's certainly not going to be someone who failed in primaries and who doesn't have like a big history to go off of other than just being the vice president.
So my thing is, honestly, this is gonna sound fucking probably, woman choice was bad to run against Trump. They should have
With a
gotten,
VP named Tim, by the way, again.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and then they should have found like someone like a little bit young, a little bit like a young male, like a strong face probably would have been like
Maybe just
like-
gay.
but I just
They
don't
should have
know.
ran Buttigieg. He would have done it.
Yeah, I don't
that's what I
know
was
enough
thinking.
about politicians. I don't know enough about politicians, honestly, to be like, oh, who should they have ran? I just know they shouldn't have fucking done whatever they did with Kamala.
The problem is that we're like it's like we're pretending there was no intent behind what the Democratic Party did, shielding Joe Biden during the primary. Because I think that is the sticking point that got 10 million people across the country. Like I remember sitting at work and I would talk to my friend he was very left wing, and I would just be like, "How can you come to me with all this stuff about Trump?" And I just ask you, "How do you support a party that lied to you about your candidate through the primary so they could put somebody else in?" And it was an indefensible position. And I think that they just tried to gaslight their way out of it and attack Trump and thought that would work. But
They were gaslighting
I was
themselves
on a
and
panel
tricking
about the
themselves into
report.
believing. Yeah, the people who tricked themselves and gaslit themselves into believing, like that's I think where you lost a lot of like them, because like now even within the own party we can't even have that conversation, because if I had a conversation with someone, I'm like, hey, like why are we just supporting Kamala? It became a huge fight. Now it became like I'm immediately a MAGA person, right? It does become like a lot of like pointing fingers. How dare you not support like whatever candidates put in front of you? I'm like, yo, dog, I don't like dictators, and you guys keep saying Trump's.
It was the same people that said country over party that were just like anything over Trump, though, and it's like, come on, like it's especially when you're the side preaching about democracy, the importance of democracy, and then you put up the first candidate that you can't even argue earned this in a democratic way. I mean, she was selected to be VP, and I think a lot of people, and I heard this in some of the panels, they had this misunderstanding that she was like a part of the primary ballot. Biden could have won this primary and picked a different VP to run with for 2024. She was not a VP in the capacity of a running mate for this election. So she wasn't like even necessarily like the only person who could have taken it up. Apparently there was something about some $30 million that she could only
whatever
take.
The fuck it is.
I don't know what that was, but
it's just disappointing to see that like, yeah, we can't, that anyone like, cause like in this election, like all my like left friends that are like hyper leftists, it's like it's gotten to be like annoying, right? Because like, and for me, it's like, okay, the guy won, whatever, but the fact that we can't even have the conversation of like to your point, you can't even have a real conversation with anyone because no one will admit to it. I feel like I'm the only person or one of the few people on the left that will actually own up to a lot of the things that like happened. Like Lactoid and Gibbs and Lactoid have had plenty of conversations. I don't feel like I do run defense in the same way that a lot of people do, and I think that's I believe in principled voting, right? that's my whole thing.
It feels like a lot of the left kind of felt like, okay, Kamala might win, and they just kind of gambled and went all in, and then they're like, fuck, like, okay, I didn't really feel this way, but like, I didn't think we'd had a chance if we didn't go all out on it. Yeah. But it's like, we knew they were not really like, it was kind of like a meme, like, oh, you don't see Kamala hats, but it was this is a very visible movement that you have with MAGA, and it was like, the Kamala thing was very manufactured and corporate, and like, honestly, just cringe.
I brought that up a lot, and everyone kept saying, like, with Biden, there wasn't, I was like, well, no, when Bernie was running, everyone I knew had a Bernie shirt, Bernie hat, Bernie sign, Bernie backpack, Bernie pin at the fucking minimum. When the Kamala versus MAGA, I brought this up. I was like, hey, I didn't see a single, like, I don't know I moved to Massachusetts, was a pretty fucking liberal state, right? I didn't see one individual person say they were like even voting Democrat, much less supporting that. And then that really threw me. Like it really threw me that like I'm in this like city and state, and it's just like, well, shit. But I still see MAGA everywhere, right? And then it's like I live in a pretty Puerto Rican community. Bunch of Puerto Ricans wearing MAGA shirts with the American flag shirts. It was a culture shock a little bit.
Well, I think
It's
Trump's
like
been able to
figuring out how to play
cultivate
the
a cult
game.
of personality a little bit, as opposed to Kamala,
Well,
who just wasn't.
that's like having this cardboard cutout of him behind me and all the MAGA stuff that I've done on stream. Like people come in and it's like very easy, like low hanging fruit to be like, oh, you guys are like cult members and stuff. But it's like it's kind of like sports. Like we have a mission, we have a goal, right? Like you wear an Eagles your Eagles jersey, you go to an Eagles game. Like nobody would scoff at that, right? We're playing a game here where we're trying to get this guy elected. Right? Yeah. We can agree on all the different positions and stuff, but ultimately on November 5th, we had to vote for this guy, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like that's what we're doing. The left kind of feels like they either don't want to do it or they think that it's going to be like done for them. Like they just rely on the big advertisers and all the like, oh, she raised $1 billion. She's got all the money she needs. We don't need to go out and do anything or like grassroots. What you see with Trump, I would argue, the reason it appears to the left like a cult is because, like I'm not. Like I don't worship Trump. Like this is just my favorite president. I'm politically aligned with like his agenda. In 10 years, I won't have a Trump cutout. In 2 weeks, I probably won't have a Trump cutout. So, but like the point is like it's not about him, but this is the game that we're playing, and they're just. I'm not going to speculate why, but they're just literally not playing it because they don't understand the grassroots need to get people out and excited about your candidate, not just your position, not just your party. Not just your general direction and vibes and promises and whatever. You need to get people excited about Kamala. What was there to get excited about Kamala other than just what came with Kamala?
Yeah, I think they tried. They tried this with the politics of joy. Remember that early on. But what I think ultimately though the problem that they kept running into, and I think this is the problem that they ran into with Hillary as well, and maybe a little bit with Biden, but they got lucky with COVID. And just the effect that had on the people's perceptions, is that I felt like they were running against something as opposed to for something, and everything was kind of steeped in this like non-joyful, but this just sort of like this cynical kind of attitude and this hateful kind of mentality of like fuck this guy, fuck everybody who stands with this guy. It's an anti-campaign. This guy is a virus, and everybody who likes him is a virus, right? They're trash or whatever. They're their basket of deplorables. Like again, the kind of the mentality continues to go forward. And meanwhile, like Trump insults people, but he always makes it about himself, and he always brings it back to himself. And he goes to the same fucking lines over again, and people show up with Trump gear on, and they're not, it's not in the same. It didn't have the same kind of cynical kind of feel.
You guys are more joyous.
It felt a little bit more joyous. It did.
Yeah.
This panel felt like the right was like more upbeat, happy, and the left was kind of like, meh. Like you say when you
my issue,
like that is just we saw that tonight.
My issue with that though, honestly, is I didn't have a problem with Trump as a candidate, as just like Trump as a candidate. I don't like this idea of having presidents that I don't see as presidential. I don't see as like I don't want Trump as president. I do want someone who's a bit more formal, who's a bit more rigid. I do kind of want a boring politician, right? I don't want politics necessarily. Like I like the entertainment aspect of it. I like the debates. I want someone lively. But one, I'm sick of old fucking men being presidents. I don't like that. I don't like old people in government. I think it makes no fucking sense. But like so that's why I think like for me, I don't love the cult mentality around Trump. It being like Trump can't fail because you guys don't have another Trump the next time. Who's your next Trump?
JD Vance, baby.
Yeah, but like he's not gonna get the fucking vibe.
I don't know. I mean,
so that's
maintenance that you don't like. But
yeah, so,
I gotta
so my worry.
I
just want to bring it up. So my worry is that your guys' next candidate is RFK. You know what I mean? Like you guys did this whole thing where an entertainer. Who's the next candidate that gets the same vibe?
Greg Abbott's really popular right now. He's booming. And he would get all the
I don't know who he is, so
he's the governor of Texas. He'd get all the immediate hate from the left. That Trump, like even more so than Trump, he'd immediately become like
the dude that sent all the migrants to the sanctuary cities. Is that him?
Yeah,
Greg Abbott?
Yeah. I'm just gonna make a comeback. I think he's not done that yet.
The short jokes are gonna get him bad.
I'll tell you who else is around is what Marco Rubio just keeps moving up every year in the list. Like I mean, yeah, there's a lot of rising stars in the Republicans. Cool. Like I think that like it's a good time to be a Republican. I think.
I just worry that that no one. Well, not I don't worry because I don't give a fuck if the Republican wins again. But like for you guys, I worry that like yeah, I worry for you guys that like you don't have another Trump, which then like where does all this steam go? That's kind of like I think you guys need to think about that because you guys did kind of fucking idolize this guy. So like, do you have another idol?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's also like Vivek. I think the one thing Trump has done a
Indian
good
president,
job of.
really?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying. I'm just.
I
Listening.
doubt it.
I'm just saying the thing I think that Trump has done with his first term, and now that he's in there, he's like definitely installed people in power that have kept power later. Like thanks for hanging out. Like they've like installed in there, and they're like gained power around them. They've made their like little.
What's up, Raiders? Well, you caught me at a bad time because I'm about to raid on out. But, who cares? It's going to bounce around a little bit. We're going to raid on out into Gibbs right away. Thank you guys so much for giving me follows and chats and all that good shit. And, yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Probably doing a stream tomorrow. So we're going to be talking about the 2024 election. So tune in. Thinking probably afternoon, probably around 3 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock Eastern.
Turn my camera on here, guys. Guys, that was a good.